Thank you. Thank you very much. Last week, we revised the course outline and decided to teach a theoretical foundation of organizational behavior session as the second one. So, today's topic is theoretical foundation of organizational behavior. As we discussed under the first session, organizational behavior is a study of human behavior which is not visible. But researchers, scholars, and then practitioners, they have developed certain theories which provide frameworks to understand, predict, and manage human behavior in your organizations. These theories or frameworks, they provide explanations for human behavior, why human beings behave as they do. These theories, they help you to figure out how and why people act in certain ways and how they learn those behaviors, how they learn new behaviors. So, today, within the next 3 hours, I will be discussing about 4 theoretical frameworks of organizational behavior. Here we have the learning outcomes of today's session. At the end, you should be able to understand theoretical foundation of organizational behavior. I will discuss 4 frameworks: behavioristic framework, then the cognitive framework, social cognitive framework, and humanistic theory. At the end, you should be able to explain how and why people behave in certain ways using these theories, these frameworks. You should be able to discuss the determinants of human behavior based on these theories. And you should know the limitation of each and every theory at the end of this session. First, let's look at the meaning of the concept theory, right? Simply, as you can see, a theory is a system of ideas intended to explain something. A system of ideas intended to explain something. It's an explanation of an aspect of a natural world, or it's an explanation for a social behavior, or it's an explanation for an event or a phenomena. For example, if we take the theory of gravitation, the theory of gravitation, it explains why apples fall from trees and astronauts float in space. And if you take another familiar theory, common theory, the theory of evolution, Parinamavada, it explained why so many plants and animals, some very similar and some very different, exist on Earth now and in the past as revealed by the fossil records. According to the third definition, a system of construct. A theory is a system of construct or system of concepts and propositions. Propositions are relationship between these concepts, right? That collectively present a logical, systematic, and coherent explanation of a phenomenon of interest. Now, for example, I will take simple example. If we take the 2 concepts, monetary rewards and employee motivation. The 2 concepts are, or the constructs are, monetary rewards and employee motivation. Now, there is a positive relationship between these 2 concepts, right? There is a positive relationship between monetary rewards and the employee motivation. Higher the monetary rewards, higher the motivation. In other words, it means that monetary rewards is important in improving employee motivation, or monetary reward, it is an important determinant of motivation, right? A theory, it not only explained a known fact, it also allows us to make predictions of what we should observe and do if it is true. If I take the same example which I mentioned earlier, if you increase salaries, increments, or the monetary rewards, what will happen to the level of motivation? And as a manager, what you can do to improve employee motivation? That is an example for a simple theory. So likewise, all the behavioral theories explained why people behave the way they do and what causes different people to react differently to the same situation. What are the factors that determine the human behavior? And if you want to change the behavior of others, if you want, as managers, if you want to change the behavior of your subordinates, what's the best way to do it? Those behavioral theories provide explanations or answers for those questions, right? Now, these are the main theoretical frameworks of organizational behavior. Behavioristic framework, cognitive framework, social learning framework or social cognitive framework, and finally, the humanistic theory. Last week also we discussed the humanistic theory. Last week we discussed humanistic theory in order to explain the nature of organizational behavior. Today I will explain it in relation to explain the causes of or the determinants of behaviors, right? These theories form the basis of organizational behavior. As I explained earlier, these theories provide explanations for why people behave the way they do and how do they learn new behaviors. Actually, these theories attempt to understand and change human behavior. Some theories, such as if you take this behavioristic framework, view behaviors as a set of positive or negative responses that can be changed through reinforcement. And some behavioral theories, such as this cognitive framework, they propose that cognition in junction with environmental influence drive an individual's behavior. And you can change behavior by changing the cognitive factors such as attitudes, values, expectations, motives, and other thoughts, right? So these theories help us to understand causes or determinant of human behavior, and through that we can develop strategies to change their behavior, to change the behavior of the employees of your organizations. එතකොට මේ theories වලින් ඇත්තටම explain කරන්නේ ඇයි සංවිධාන තුල එහෙම නැත්නම් මිනිස්සු යම් විශේෂිත ආකාරයකට හැසිරෙන්නේ. මේ මිනිසුන්ගේ චර්යාව තීරණය කරන සාධක මොනවාද? සහ ඒ චර්යාවන් වෙනස් කරනවා නම් අපි වෙනස් කරන්න ඕනේ මොනවාද කියන දේවල් තමයි මේ framework තුලින් සාකච්ඡාවට භාජනය කරන්නේ, right? Now, first I will explain the behavioristic framework. Now, first, Ivan Paulo and John B. Watson used classical conditioning of learning to explain human behavior in terms of stimulus response relationship, right? They try to explain human behavior in terms of stimulus-response relationship. I will explain this in detail. They emphasize the overt observable behavior of employees or people. And based on this theory, a person elicits behavior in accordance with the stimulus that he or she receives. Now listen to this again, right? Based on this theory, a person elicits behavior in accordance with the stimulus that he or she received through her or him, his five senses, right? Simply, behavior is a response to a stimulus. This theory explains how we learn new behaviors as human beings and how to change them. According to this theory, we learn behavior through association. So, the key element in the classical conditioning theory is association. Based on this theory, we learn behavior through association. For example, if a student frequently encounters unpleasant stimulus in the mathematics class, such as unfriendly teachers or a lot of homework, then he or she may learn to dislike mathematics. They develop an association between the unfriendly teacher and the mathematics, right? Then, for another example, in the workplace, workers learn to associate rewards and their efforts, right? You know that you have to work hard to gain more rewards. For another example in the workplace, now listen to this. Well, this is very interesting. A time clock that makes a loud noise whenever someone punches in late, right, would create conditioned response such as being embarrassed. දැන් ඔයා පරක්කු වෙලා ඇවිල්ලා ඔයාගේ ඔෆිස් එකේ තියෙනවා ටයිම් ක්ලොක් එකක්. ඔයා ටයිම් එක පන්ච් කරනකොට ඔයා අට පහුවෙලා නම් ආවේ එයා හයියෙන් සද්දයක් දානවා. කුරුල්ලෙක් කෑ ගහන සද්දයක් හරි බල්ලේ බුරන සද්දයක් හරි. හරි ඒක ඔක්කොටම ඇහෙනවා. හරි මේක පොඩි පනිෂ්මන්ට් එකක්. ඔයාට ලැජ්ජා හිතෙනවනේ. එතකොට ඔයා හැම වෙලාවෙම උත්සාහ දරනවා මොකකටද අර සද්දය අහන්න නැති වෙන්න අටට ඉස්සර වෙලා එන්න. right? Make a use කරපු technique එකක්, right? So employees within that organization make association between coming late and the loud noise of the time clock. In order to avoid that stimulus, the sound of the time clock, and then the embarrassment, many employees would try harder to be on time, right? To come to the office on time. And now look at this. The most famous example of classical conditioning, it was Pavlov's experiment. Let me make this bigger. This is the most famous example of classical conditioning. It was Pavlov's experiment with dogs who salivated in response to a baritone. Pavlov found out that when a bell was sounded, each time the dog was fed, the dog learned to associate the sound with the presentation of food. Now look at this. First stage, before conditioning. In this stage, the unconditioned stimulus, right? The unconditioned stimulus produces an unconditioned response in an organism. Here, the organism is the dog, right? Here, the unconditioned stimulus is meat, and unconditioned response is salivation. Salivation, right? Now, the dog salivates when it sees meat. We know that. It is a natural response, which has not been taught. Here, the unconditioned stimulus is the stimulus that can produce the response without any learning. දැන් බල්ලාට මස් දැක්කහම කොහොමත් කඩට කෙලවුනනවා. ඒක ඉගෙන ගන්න දෙයක් නෑ. යාගේ ඒක natural habit එකක්. හරි? එතකොට මේ ඒ natural response එක නිර්මාණය කරන stimulus එකට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ unconditioned stimulus කියලා. Now, here this unconditioned response, salivation, it is the inborn natural reaction to the unconditioned stimulus, right? So next I will move to the second stage before conditioning. At the second stage, the researcher presented a neutral, right? The researcher, Pavlov and Watson, they presented a neutral stimulus, the bell. Without meat, it does not produce a response. The dog did not salivate to the sound of the bell. And now look at the third stage, during condition. Under this stage, for a certain period of time, the researchers presented food to the dog with the sound of the bell. First, they exposed the dog to the sound of the bell and then they presented the food immediately. Here, the sound of the bell, it was the neutral stimulus. After several conditioned trials, Pavlov noted that the dog began to salivate after hearing the sound of the bell without the presence of the food. The dog has learned the association between the sound of the bell and the food. ඉස්සර වෙලා බෙල් එක ගැහුවා. බෙල් එකට කෙලුණා නෑ බල්ලට. ඊට පස්සේ යා මොකද කරේ? මේ බෙල් එක ගහලා ඒ ගමන්ම මස් දුන්නා. එතකොට මේක කීප පාරයක් කරන්න පටන් ගත්තට පස්සේ බල්ලාට මස් දුන්නේ නැතත් එයා බෙල් එකේ සද්දෙට කෙල ඉරෙන්න පටන් ගත්තා. Right? Here, the conditioned stimulus, bell, right? It acquired ability to produce the response because it is associated or paired with the unconditioned stimulus, meat. Based on this research or the experiment, they concluded that people learn behavior through association and behavior is a response to a stimulus. However, the main weakness of classical conditioning theory is they did not recognize the importance of the cognitive process, which is the main contributing factor for behavior. Right? So here also we have explanation on the classical conditioning. I explained these concepts, right, with the previous one, right? Pavlov's classical conditioning of learning theory emphasized that a person's illicit behavior in accordance with the stimulus received. And actually, behaviors, they are response to a stimulus, right? And cognitive processes are not recognized as important contributing factors for behaviors, right? Next, I will move to the operant conditioning, which is the second part of the behavioristic framework. B.F. Skinner proposed this theory by conducting various experiments on animals again, right? Both the previous researchers as well as this researcher B.F. Skinner conducted experiments using animals. He used a special box, right? The name of this box is Skinner box, right? As the first step to his experiment, he placed a hungry rat. You can see here, right? He placed a hungry rat inside the Skinner box. And the rat was initially inactive inside the box, but gradually as it began to adapt to the environment of the box, it began to explore around. And the box contained lever. Now look at this, right? You can see the lever, right? This box, it actually, what happened, right? What happened? Now this rat moved about the box, right? And it accidentally knocked the lever. Immediately did so a food pallet, right? Now here you can see it. And immediately it did so, knocked the lever, a food pallet would drop into the container next to the lever. And when they repeat the same thing again and again, the rat quickly learned to go strictly to the lever after a few times of being put in the box. The consequences of receiving food, if they press the lever, ensured that they would repeat the action again and again. The rat know when it pressed the lever, it received the food pallet. So when it is hungry, it pressed the lever again and again. Here, the action of pressing the lever is an operant behavior, and the food release inside the chamber is the reward. Since the rat was hungry, the food which filled its hunger can be considered as a positive reinforcement. Now, based on these findings, Skinner argued that the person's perception, now listen to this, right? Listen to this well. The person's perception of consequences of a response could better explain most human behavior. Now listen to this again, right? The person's perception of consequences of a response. Perception of consequences of a response could better explain most human behavior. Now, this I will give a few examples. Positive reinforcement strengthens a behavior by providing a consequence an individual finds rewarding. For example, if you give rewards each time your subordinates complete a job successfully, he will more likely to repeat their behavior in the future. Because he perceived that if he completes the job successfully, he will receive rewards in the future also. He perceived that. Perception. He perceived that if he completes the job successfully, he will receive rewards in future. So, the perception of the consequences of the action. If you work hard, if you complete the job successfully, you will receive rewards. Receiving rewards, that is the consequences. Right? So, the perception of consequence of the action creates the action. දැන් ඔයා සාර්ථකව මේක කම්ප්ලීට් කරොත් ඔයාට රිවෝඩ් හම්බ වෙයි කියන perception එක. ඒ perception එක තමයි ඔයාගේ action එකට behavior එකට බලපාන්නේ. You work hard because you perceive that if you work hard, at the end you will receive the rewards or the promotion or the foreign project, right? So the perception of the consequence of the action creates the behavior, creates the action. You perceive that if you work hard, you will receive the promotion, and in order to get the promotion, you work hard. ඔයා හිතනවා ඔයා මහන්සි වෙලා වැඩ කරොත් එහෙම ඔයාට හම්බ වෙයි කියලා මොකද්ද ප්‍රොමෝෂන් එක. හරි? ඒ හින්දා ඔයා මොකද කරන්නේ? perception එක. You perceive that if you work hard, at the end of the year you will receive the promotion. So the stimulus come at a later stage. Stimulus is the reward or the promotion or the salary increment, right? Your action or the response comes first, right? So here the response comes first because the perception of the consequences lead to the response. Here the stimulus are the rewards or the promotion or the salary increments or any other reward, right? In order to receive these rewards, you work hard. That is your behavior. That is your response. You complete your jobs successfully. You do this because you perceive that if you behave in a certain way, at the end you will receive this stimulus, right? එතකොට ඔයාගේ perception එක මේ stimulus එක මේ response එකට හම්බ වෙයි කියන perception එක තමයි ඔයාව lead කරන්නේ මේ behavior එකට, right? According to the Operand Conditioning theory, right? Reinforcement, according to this theory, reinforcement, right? Positive reinforcement strengthen and increase desired behaviors, and on the other hand, punishments weaken and decrease undesirable behaviors. I will give you another example. Now, a worker in your organization will follow rules strictly to avoid being punished, shaping them into disciplined individuals, right? Workers, they will follow rules strictly because they know that if they perceive that if they break these rules or if they misbehave, then they will be punished at the end. They will receive punishments, right? So that perception shape their behaviors, right? Make them into disciplined individuals in your organization. In the workplace, operant conditioning is a way of guiding employees by rewarding and penalizing certain behaviors. Managers can reward employees for behaviors that meets their standards, right? Or they can penalize behaviors that they want to discourage, right? Through this method, employees receive clear guidance on the company's expectations and know what behavior to repeat or discontinue. එතකොට ඔයාගේ organization එකේ ඔයාගේ workplace එකේ manager කෙනෙක් විදිහට ඔයාට පුළුවන් මේක use කරන්න මිනිසුන්ගේ මොනවාද to change their behaviors. In order to change their behavior, you can use this theory, right? You can use both the positive reinforcement, positive rewards, as well as punishments to change the behavior of people according to this behavioristic framework, right? So the classical conditioning and the operant conditions are the two parts of the behavioristic model, right? And here we have the limitation of behavioristic framework. Now, these two theories, right, which comes under the behavioristic model, the classical conditioning and operant conditioning, they focused only the observable behavior. But it is only a small part of human behavior. And people learned behaviors in different ways. And we know that a lot of other things influence the behavior of human beings, right? And now, why is it? Now we consider it as a reductionist approach because it focuses only one aspect of human behavior, only the observable behaviors, right? Now, according to scholars, human behavior is far more complex than we imagine. According to Bandura, he mentioned that numerous factors ranging from genetics to life experiences shape each individual behavior. But these under the behavioristic framework, these researchers, they did not consider those factors, right? They ignored the mental processes that influence human behavior. According to behavioristic, people can only learn as a result of their experiences. Yes, cognition on behavior. Here the cognition means the thinking process, the mental processes that influence behavior, right? I will explain the meaning of cognition in detail later when we discuss the cognitive framework, right? Cognition, it reflects all the mental processes, right? The way we perceive our personalities, our interpretations, then our attitudes, our values, our emotions, our thoughts. We know that all of those things influence our behaviors, right? So the cognition, it represents all of those mental processes. This behavioristic approach did not consider the role of the cognition in determining the behavior of people. මිනිසුන්ගේ චර්යාවන් තීරණය කිරීමෙහිලා මිනිස් මනස එහෙම නැත්නම් බ්‍රේන් එක වැඩ කරන ආකාරය මෙතන explain කරන්නේ. Yes, the second question is, can you explain the difference between classical conditioning and operant conditioning? Because I feel like both are same. Actually, there is a small difference. I will show you again, right? Let me go back. There is a difference between classical conditioning and the what is the other one? Operant conditioning, right? Now, this is the difference, right? Here, look at this relationship, right? The stimulus, right, comes first and the response comes later, right? According to this theory, person elicits behavior in accordance with the stimulus receives, right? So according to this theory, behaviors are reactions to stimulus, right? But now, when it comes to human beings and their complex behavior, this is wrong. We know that, right? Now, under the Operand Conditioning theory, the response comes first, right? That is true. We perceive that, right? If we work hard, at the end of the year, we will receive the rewards. So, rewards or the stimulus comes after the actions. If you work hard, you will receive the stimulus or the rewards. If you work hard, if you complete the job successfully, you will receive the promotion. That perception, right? The perception determine the response based on the stimulus, right? This is the consequence, right? Person's perception of consequences of a response, right? Here the consequences is the stimulus, maybe rewards, maybe punishment, right? Bonus, increments, foreign challenging project, recognition, or any other thing, right? If you behave in a certain way because you perceive that if you behave in this way, then at the end you will receive these things or the consequences, right? So that is here the response or the behavior comes first, right? So that is the difference between operant conditioning and the classical conditioning. එතකොට ඔය දෙකේ අතර වෙනස ඕක තමයි. දැන් classical conditioning එකේදී තියෙන්නේ අපි පහන ඇල්ලුවාම අත පිච්චෙනවනේ. හරි. එතකොට අපි අත එළියට ගන්නවා. ඒ වගේ එකක් තමයි classical conditioning එකේදී කියන්නේ. Right? So it simply means that we receive a stimulus through our five senses. We see things, hear things, touch things, right? So when we see those things, we respond, right? Those responses are our behaviors. එතකොට ඒ conditional classical conditioning වලින් කියන්නේ අපේ behaviors කියන්නේ අපි අර එළියෙන් එන external stimulus වලට දක්වන reactions විතරක් කියලා. හරි? එතකොට මෙතන මේ operant condition වල perception එක ගැන කතා කරනවා. දැන් stimulus එක තමයි අතනදී ඉස්සර වෙලා එන්නේ, response එක එහෙම නැත්නම් behavior එක ඉන්නේ පස්සේ. නමුත් ඔයාලා හොඳට හිතලා බැලුවොත් හරි අපේ සාමාන්‍ය ජීවිතයේ මිනිස්සුන්ගේ අපේ behavior එක ඉස්සෙල්ලා අපි හිතනවානේ. හරි? Even though they use the concept of perception, they did not recognize the power of the cognition, right? It was there, right? The power of the brain, right? Power of the mind, it was there, but they didn't talk about it. අර perception කියන්නේ අතර අපේ ඇතුලේ තියෙන inner feeling එකක්නේ. හරි ඒක මේක ලොකු බලපෑමක් කරා operant conditioning theory එකට. නමුත් මේ mind එක මේ brain එක play කරන මේ role එක ගැන එයාලා කතා කරේ නැහැ. හරි එයා කතා කරේ මේ perception ගැන කිව්වට කතා කරේ මේ response එකයි මේ stimulus ගැන විතරයි. හරි එතකොට operant conditioning එක අතනින් වෙනස් උනේ response එක අපේ perception of the person's perception of the consequences of the response, right? It leads to the behavior response, right? මේ behavior එකට ලැබෙන consequences එක positive negative punishment ඕන දෙයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. හරි එතකොට ඒ ගැන තියෙන perception එක මත තමයි මේ behavior එක තීරණය වෙන්නේ operant conditioning theory එකට අනුව, right? So that is the difference between classical conditioning and operant conditioning. Both theories focused on the observable behaviors, right? We were talking about the limitations of the behavioristic framework, right? I explained the first one, right? And moving to the second one, actually, even though they applied their findings to explain human behavior in social context, they relied on laboratory experiments which lacks the ecological validity. Here, the ecological validity, it is the ability to generalize to the real life settings of human beings. They applied their findings to explain the behavior of human beings, but all of their experiments were based on laboratory experiments. So these experiments, right, lacks the ecological validity, ability to generalize their findings to the real life setting of human beings, right? And third one is, we know that humans are more complex than animals. But these researchers, they used only animals for their experiments, such as rats, pigeons, dogs, to examine factors that create certain type of human behaviors. So it causes problems with the generalizing or applying to humans, right? And in addition to that, in addition to these limitations, these behaviorists, they view humans as passive learners, right? But humans are active agents, as all of us know, right? We have the capacity to control, and determine our own behavior. Right? This behavioristic framework did not consider that aspect. Right? So those are the main limitations of behavioristic framework. Do you have any more questions in relation to this framework?
Madam, excuse me.
Yes.
Can you explain the last point that you explained under these limitations?
Yes, cause problems when generalizing to humans. Actually, it relates to the previous point. That's why I didn't take it separately. They used animals, right, for all of their studies, right? Both researchers used animals, right? Rats. Then they used dogs, as I explained earlier, and pigeons, right? But we know that animals, right? Their behaviors as well as their brains are totally different from human beings. So we have to think again. Can we apply those findings, right, to human beings? Can we generalize those findings to human beings? Can we use them to explain the behavior of human beings? Since behavior of human beings are complex and totally different from the behavior of animals, right? So that is the last point. It relates to the previous one. Is it clear?
Yes, madam. Thank you so much.
Right. Yes, we have another question. Madam, what was the extra point you added, right? The extra point is these behavioristic, right? They view humans as passive learners. You know the meaning of passive. Huh? According to them, human beings are not active, right? They don't have the capacity to determine their own behaviors. But we know that, all of us know that we can make choices, right? We have the capacity to determine our behavior. We can collect information, analyze them, compare them, right? And then we can compare both positive and negative aspect, weaknesses and strength, advantages and disadvantages. We can look at the behavior of others and the consequences of their behaviors. And based on all of those things, right, we can decide our own behavior. We can choice. We have that capability, right? But these researchers, they did not consider those things, right? Actually, human beings are active agents who are able to decide, right? Determine their own development, right? They have the ability to determine decide their own behavior. අපිට තියෙනවනේ ඒක. හරි? ඔයා හොඳින් හැසිරෙනවද නරකින් හැසිරෙනවද? ඉගෙන ගන්නවද නැද්ද? බ්‍රයිබ්ස් ගන්නවද නැද්ද? හරි මැනිපියුලේට් කරනවද නැද්ද? පොලිටික්ස් භාවිතා කරනවද නැද්ද? You have the ability to select whatever the behavior, right? So that's the nature of human beings. But they didn't consider that particular aspect. Eka consider kare na. Right? We have another question. Passive weavers, they cannot think, analyze, cannot decide behavior. Yes. If human beings are passive, right, then they cannot think, analyze, so cannot decide their own behaviors. That's true. But we know that we are not passive. We are active agents, right? We can think, we can analyze, compare, right? And decide our own behaviors. So it is also a weakness of this approach, right? Any more questions from the class? මම ආසයි ඔයාලා ප්‍රශ්න අහනවට. හරි? If you don't have more questions, Actually, I want you to read more, right? On these things, they are very interesting. Yes. Madam, can you explain reductionist approach? Yes, I can explain, right? Actually, under the reductionist approach, what we do, we divide the whole into different parts, and we examine only one part, right? And based on that, we make a conclusion for the whole. That is the reductionist approach. Now, under the behavioristic approach, they look at they focus on only the observable behavior of human beings. Now, if we take the next one, right, the cognitive approach, I will explain it again with the cognitive approach. Under that approach, they consider only the role of the mind in determining the behavior of people. They did not consider the environmental factors, right, as well as the role of the genes, hereditary factors, in determining the behavior of people, right? All of those things, as we discussed under the first lesson, right? The cognitive factors, then the environmental factors, the social background, right? All of those things, the genetic and the hereditary factors, all of those things influence the behavior of human beings. But under the cognitive framework also, they considered only the cognitive factors that influence the human behavior. They ignored all the other factors. They selected only one particular aspect and then studied it, and based on their findings, they provided explanation to explain the whole person. අර සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම පුද්ගලයාගේ behavior එක තමයි explain කරන්නේ. හැබැයි explain කරන්නේ යාලා study කරන්නේ එක part එකක්. දැන් behavioristic approach එකේ යා study කරන්නේ observable behavior එක විතරයි. Cognitive approach එකේ යා study කරන්නේ cognition එක විතරයි. Mind process එක විතරයි. Mental processes විතරයි. නමුත් social learning framework එකේ ඒකට දකි ඉගෙන ඉස්සරහට යනකොට they considered all the factors, right? All the factors that determine human behavior under the social cognitive framework. So, under reductionist approach, they divided the whole thing into several parts and study only one part. And based on the findings on those studies, they make conclusion for the whole thing. That is wrong. Right? එක වැරදි. හරි? අපි එක කොටසක් අධ්‍යයනය කරලා සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම පුද්ගලයෙකුගේ behavior එකට reasons දෙනවා නම් ඒක වැරදි. Right? Is it clear? Yes. 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 Yes, of course. Yes. Now, actually, all of these theories, right? All of these behavioral theories are psychological theories, right? We can apply these theories to explain the behavior of patients, right? So, now, history of the patient, that is another factor that influences the behavior of that person. Right? Yes. Can I move to the next one? Or do you have any more questions? Right. If you have any more questions, ask later. Right? I will give you time again. Cognitive framework. The second one. Actually, this cognitive framework, Edward Tolman introduced this theory, and it provides another base to understand human behavior. In the cognitive framework, cognition precedes behavior. Now, what is this cognition? Cognition, according to this slide, it is the act of knowing an item of information, right? But it is broader than that, right? Cognition consists of all the mental processes by which people became aware of and gain knowledge about the world. It involves all conscious and unconscious processes by which knowledge is accumulated, such as perceiving, recognizing, then conceiving, reasoning, remembering, and judging, and the list goes on, right? According to Tolman, human behaviors are product of these mental processes. According to him, behavior is purposive. We behave in a certain way in order to achieve something, right? Now, it is directed towards a specific purpose. People are conscious and active in determining their behavior. People use their past experiences and learning as a basis for present behavior. You know that is true, right? When we decide a certain behavior, right, to act or to react or to respond, right, we use our past experiences and learning and our knowledge, right, as a basis for present behavior to determine our next behavior, right? And they also make present and future choices of their behavior, and then evaluate the consequences of their behavior. Here they means human beings, right? Human beings make present and future choices of their behavior according to this theory, right? And they evaluate the consequences of their behavior before the behavior. මොකක්ද මේ කියන්නේ? හිතලා මතලා හරි අපේ අත්දැකීම් ඊට පස්සේ අපේ learnings හරි අපේ knowledge මේ සියල්ල මත හරි අපි මේ behavior එකේ consequences මම මේ විදිහට behave කරාම ඒකේ මොන ප්‍රතිඵල ගෙනෙයිද කියලා ඒ consequences බලලා තමයි අපි අපේ වර්තමාන සහ අනාගත චර්යාවන් තීරණය කරන්න කියලා Tolman කියනවා. Right? Tolman believed that individuals do more than merely respond to stimulus. That is true, right? We, as human beings, right, do more than merely respond to stimulus. Right? People act on thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, and changing conditions. Right? And simply behaviors are product of mental processes, thoughts, attitudes, values, beliefs, and other emotions. දැන් මොකක්ද මේ අපි කියන්නේ මේ මෙච්චර වෙලා කිව්වේ මේ මිනිසුන්ගේ චර්යාවන් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද according to this theory, right? Human behaviors are product of mental processes, thoughts, attitudes, values, beliefs, and other emotions. He felt that, right? The researchers who introduced this theory, including Edward Tolman, they felt that behavior was mainly cognitive. According to this framework, before the behavior of a person, cognition starts and provides inputs to the thinking. බොහොම සරලව කියනවා නම් පුද්ගලයෙක් සිතා මතා අතීත දත්ත වර්තමාන දත්ත පරීක්ෂණය කරලා විශ්ලේෂණය කරලා තර්කානුකූලව ගොඩනගලා යම් කිසි අරමුණක් ඉෂ්ට කර ගැනීම සඳහා හිතා මතාම තමන්ගේ චර්යාව තීරණය කරනවා කියලා තමයි මේ theory එකෙන් කියන්නේ, right? It is about understanding how the human mind works while people behave. It focuses on how information is processed by the brain and how learning occurs through the internal processing of information. It is based on the idea that people mentally process information that they receive before deciding responses or behaviors rather than simply responding to stimulus from their environment. පරිසරයේ නිකම්ම එන ස්ටිමියුලස් වලට රෙස්පොන්ස් කරනවා නෙමෙයි. රෙස්පොන්ඩ් කරනවා නෙමෙයි. එයාලා ඒ රෙස්පොන්ඩ් කරන්න ඉස්සර වෙලා ඇක්ට් කරන්න රියැක්ට් කරන්න ඉස්සර වෙලා එයාලා හිතලා මතලා ඉන්ෆෝමේෂන් කලෙක්ට් කරලා ඒ සිතා මතා එයාලගේ ඒ ඇක්ෂන් එක තීරණය කරනවා කියන එක තමයි මේ මොඩල් එකේ කියන්නේ. They believe that in order to understand behavior, you have to understand what goes in the brain to cause the behavior. Right? Now, listen to this again. Right? If you want to change the behavior, you have to understand what goes in the brain to cause the behavior. Right? In other words, if you want to change the behavior of an individual according to this theory, right, you have to change the mental processes, thoughts of individuals, attitudes, values, beliefs, perceptions, right, and their expectations. That is also true. We know that if you want to change the behavior of your subordinate, first of all, you have to address these things: attitudes, values, beliefs, and their expectations, motives. You have to we have to change the way they perceive the world. We have to change their personalities. Right? We have to change their attitudes, values, beliefs, expectations, motives. Right? By changing those things, you can change the behavior of people according to this approach. ඒකත් ඇත්තනේ. හරි? අපි මිනිසුන්ව වෙනස් කරනවා නම් මේ මිනිසුන්ගේ ආකල්ප වෙනස් කරන්න ඕනේ. හරි? එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ විශ්වාසයන්, ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ expectations, එයාලගේ පෞරුෂයන්, perception, the way they look at the world, right? Their thoughts, their emotion, we have to change those things in order to change the behavior of a person. එතකොට මේ cognitive framework එකේ කියන්නේ මේ මිනිසුන්ගේ මනස ක්‍රියා කරන ආකාරය අනුව තමයි චර්යාව. හරි? මනස තියෙන මේ ඇතුළේ දේවල් තමයි මිනිසුන්ගේ හැසිරෙන විදිය තීරණය කරන්නේ. එහෙනම් ඒ observable behavior එක change කරන්න නම් first you have to change the mental processes. Right? So, but the previous one, right? The behavioristic framework proposed that in order to change the behavior, change the stimulus, positive or negative reinforcement, right? By changing the stimulus, you can change the behavior according to the behavioristic framework. According to the cognitive framework, in order to change the behavior of people, you have to change the mental processes, the cognition, right? Now look at this. Now, what is this? What is this? Can you recognize this? Can one of you tell me? Yes, right. It's a maze, right? This tall man also used a maze, right? Here you can see the tall man's maze, right? Maze, it is a confused network of patterns which is designed as a puzzle. Now you can see it, right? Which one has to find a way? Now, this researcher, Tolman, and another researcher, as I remember, Hornsey, helped him to conduct this experiment. Tolman and Hornsey, they built this maze to investigate the role of role of the mind, right? In determining the behavior, right? And to examine the latent learning in rats. I will explain that concept later, the latent learning, right? They investigate reinforcement as well as the learning behavior of rats, right? Now, it proved that rats actually process information rather than operating on a stimulus response behavior. In this study, Tolman used 3 groups of rats, and rats had to find ways around a complex maze in order to reach foods, right? At the end of the maze, you can see there was a food box, right? Group 1 was rewarded every time they go to the end of the maze, right? With the food. Then for the group 2, for the first 10 days, every time they got to the end, they were taken out without giving food. For the first group, all the rats were rewarded every time they go to the end with the food. Right? For the second group, for the first 10 days, every time they got to the end, they were taken out without giving the food. And from day 11 to 17, every time they got to the end, food was given. එතකොට second group එකට දවස් 10ක් යනකම් එයාලා මේ end එකට ගියාට එයාලට කැම දුන්නේ නැහැ. හැබැයි 11 වෙනි දවසේ ඉඳලා 17 වෙනිදා වෙනකම් end එකට ගියාම කැම දුන්නා. හැබැයි first group එකට end එක හොයාගත්ත හැම සැරේම ඒ හොයාගත්තොත් කැම දුන්නා. Right? And no reward for the third group, right? They were taken out from the maze without giving food, even though they came to the end, right? And they observed that as a result of this experiment, they observed that the third group took longer to reach the end because there was no motivation for them to perform. The third group, they didn't receive food at the end, right? So they took longer to reach the end, right? Because there was no motivation for them to perform, right? To go to the end. The first group reached the end fast, right? Faster than all the other groups because they are rewarded and they have learned a lesson, right? Second group also reached the end since they know that there are foods at the end, right? To this experiment, the researchers found that rats were actually processing information in their brains by mentally using their cognitive maps. The rats use cognitive maps. Tolman coined the term cognitive map, which is an internal representation of external environmental feature or a landmark. Actually, what is a cognitive map? All of us are familiar about cognitive maps, right? Now, even today, a lot of teachers, right, they use this cognitive map in order to teach and to change the learning behavior of students, right? So it is a familiar concept which was introduced by Tolman, right? He thought that these rats, they use this cognitive maps to find foods, right? A cognitive map, right? It is a visual representation of the outside world that is kept within the mind. It is a kind of a repository for personal and group information, which includes information about places, features, relations, spaces and distance. නිකන් හිතලා බලන්න අපි අලුත් තැනකට යනකොට එක එක්සැම්පල් එකක් ඔයාලට කිව්වොත් එහෙම දැන් මගේ දුවව ගෙනිච්ච අපි මේ කැස්බෑවේ ක්ලාස් එකකට සර් කෙනෙක්ගේ හරි. එතකොට දැන් මට මේ පැත්ත දන්නේ නැහැ. හරි. ඉතින් හස්බන්ඩ් ඉස්සෙල්ලා දවසේ එක්කන් ගියා අපි දෙන්නව. මං ගියා පාර බලන්න. හරි. එතකොට මං ඔය කැස්බෑවේ හන්දියෙන් එහාට යන්න ඕනේ කිලෝමීටරයක් විතර එහාට ගිහිල්ලා දකුණු පැත්තට හැරිලා යන්න ඕනේ. හරි? එතකොට මම දැන් මතක තියාගන්නවා පාර. දැන් ඊළඟ දවසේ මම තනියම යන්න ඕනේනේ. එතකොට මම මතක තියාගත්තා. කොහොමද මතක තියාගත්තේ? බයිපාස් එක මතක තියාගත්තා. මෙහි ඉඳලා යනකොට 120 රූට් එකේ ගිහිල්ලා බයිපාස් එකේ ගිහිල්ලා ජංක්ෂන්ස් තුන්වෙනි ජංක්ෂන් එක කියලා මතක තියාගත්තා. ඒ කැස්බෑවේ ජංක්ෂන් එකට ඉස්සර වෙලා ඔයාලට දන්නවා ඇති අර 7 කියලා හොටෙල් එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒකේ මතක තියාගත්තා ඒ ලෑන්ඩ්මාර්ක් එක. ඊට පස්සේ ජංක්ෂන් එක ඉස්සරහට ගියම ස්පේස් එක. හරි මේ ක්ලාස් එකට කොච්චර ඩිස්ටන්ස් එකක් තියෙනවද? හරි? ඊට පස්සේ ප්ලාන්ට් නර්සරි එකක් තියෙනවා. එතකොට මම ඕ තමයි ඇඳගත්තේ. හරි? එතකොට ස්පෙෂල් features, special places, distance, හරි? ඒ වගේ දේවල් වලින් මම ඔළුවේ ඇඳගත්තා මේ මැප් එක. මේ කොග්නිටිව් මැප් එක කියලා කියන්නේ අපි ඔළුවේ චිත්‍රයක් ඇඳ ගන්නවා. හරි? මතක තියාගන්න. හරි? ඊට පස්සේ දෙවෙනි දවසේ දැන් මම මගේ ඔළුවෙන් මේක එළියට ගන්නවා යනකොට තනියම. හරි? මම බයිපාස් එකට ගියා. මේකේ අර ජංක්ෂන්ස් ටික පාස් කරා. හොටෙල් එක දැක්කා මගේ left side එකේ. හරි? එතකොට ඊට පස්සේ කොච්චරද ඩිස්ටන්ස් එක කිලෝමීටරයක් විතර කියලා මම මතක තියාගත්තා අර ප්ලාන්ට් නර්සරි එක. එතකොට මට හරියට ගියා ප්ලේස් එකට. එතකොට මට දැන් ආයි කවදාවත් එහෙම කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. දැන් මගේ ඔළුවේ හරියට ලස්සනට ඇඳිලා තියෙන මෙමරි එකේ. මොකද දවස් 10ක් 15ක් යනකොට දැන් ඕනෙම විදිහකට ගිය හැකි කිසිම උදව්වක් නැතුව. ඒක තමයි කොග්නිටිව් මැප් එක. හරි? අපි මැප් අපේ ඔළුවේ අපි ඇඳ ගන්නවා ඒක. හරි මෙමරි එකට දා ගන්නවා ඇත්තටම. හරි? අපි ඒ ෆීචර්ස්, ස්පේසස් මේ ඔක්කොම දේවල් එකට එකතු කරලා අපි බ්‍රේන් එකේ දා ගන්නවා අඳ ගන්නවා. ඒක ඇතුලේ තියෙන්නේ අපේ හියුමන් බ්‍රේන් එකේ අපි මෙමරි එක තුල. හරි? අපි ගොඩ දේවල් cues අපි කියනවා. ගොඩ cues use කරනවා features මේ ඇතුලේ මේක දා ගන්න. හරි? ඊට පස්සේ අපිට මොටිවේෂන් එකක්, ඔබ්ජෙක්ටිව් එකක්, ගෝල් එකක් ඇති වුණාම අපි අර ඔක්කොම එළියට අරගෙන හරි? එහෙම තමයි අපි ඕනෙම behavior එකක් තීරණය කරන්නේ. අපි අපේ past experience, අපේ knowledge, අපේ learning, අනිත් අයගේ behaviors, අනිත් ඒවට ලැබුණු consequences, අපිට ලැබිච්ච consequences, හරි? අපේ attitudes, values මේ ඔක්කොම use කරලා තමයි අපි decision එක ගන්න අන්තිමට මොකක්ද කරන්නේ කියලා. හරි? එතකොට එහෙම තමයි උනේ ඇත්තටම. හරි? මෙයා ඇඳපු මැප් එකත් ඒ වගේ තමයි. Right? Now this proved, right? This experiment proved the role of cognition in determining the behavior. We collect information through our senses, 5 senses, you know the senses. Then we store them within our brain, right? Take them out whenever necessary, analyze them, compare, organize, link them with each other, interpret and finally determine our actions and responses, right? So the cognition plays very important role in determining our actions and reactions, our behaviors. In addition to this, Tolman introduced the concept of latent learning, right? It is a form of learning that is not immediately expressed in an overt response. Actually, this latent learning, it refers to knowledge that only becomes clear when a person has incentive to display it. Latent learning, it is important because in most cases, the information we have learned is not recognizable until the moment that we need to display it. For a simple example, while you might have learned how to cook, right, by watching your parents, this learning may not appear until you find yourself having to cook a meal on your own. You have a mental picture of how to do it. You have learned a certain kind of behavior, but it is not immediately apparent, right? So based on all of these things, he concluded that people learn behaviors, how to behave in certain situations. It takes place, but it will not manifest itself immediately. It will show up only when the need arises. එතකොට latent learning කියන්නේ මේ අපි ඇත්තටම ඉගෙන ගන්නවා behaviors. හරි? අපි ගොඩාක් දේවල් ඉගෙන ගන්නවා. හැබැයි ඒක ඒ වෙලාවෙම emerge වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ඒ වෙලාවෙම react කරන්නේ නැහැ. respond කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ behavior එක පෙන්වු කරන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් අපි මේ behavior එක ඉගෙනගෙන අපේ ඔළුව ඇතුලේ තියෙනවා. හරි? අපිට ඕනේ වුණා. අපි ඒක එළියට අරගෙන ඒ විදිහට හසිරෙනවා කියන එක තමයි මේ latent learning එකේ කියන්නේ. Right? As time progress, you will learn to handle before that, actually I will take an example. I will take example from an organization. Now, assume that you are a junior employee, right? First, as a junior employee, you will perform whatever tasks are delegated to you, right? But after a certain period of time, right, you will learn to handle any kind of responsibility, right? Other responsibilities too, right? In addition to your responsibilities, which may not be a part of your job. You may assume that one of your senior is absent, right? One day, if your senior is ill, right, you may step into his shoes for a few days and carry out the same duties efficiently. ඉස්සෙල්ලා ඔයා කරපු නමුත් senior manager ගේ work ටික හරි එයා සනීප වෙච්ච වෙලාවේ ඔයාට කරන්න කියනවා ඔයා කරනවා. And you can do it effectively, efficiently, successfully. You find that you can do it successfully. ඔයාට තේරෙනවා ඔයාට ඒක සාර්ථකව කරන්න පුළුවන්. හරි? එතකොට මේක එකපාරට එන දෙයක් නෙමෙයිනේ. ඒ ඇත්තටම වෙලා තියෙන්නේ throughout the time. හරි? ඔයා මේක දැකලා මේක observe කරලා ඉගෙනගෙන තියෙනවා. හරි? ඒක නිසා පස්සේ ඔයාට opportunity එක ආවට පස්සේ ඔයා ඒක කරනවා. right? පාට එක කරන්න පුළුවන්කම එනවා. ඒක තමයි මේ latent learning කියලා කියන්නේ. Even though you knew the job, right? You did not demonstrate them officially until the need arose. These observations have suggested that we learn behaviors as we go, and not just behaviors we are going to be rewarded, right? We learn even these behaviors without any motivation. දැන් අපිට rewards ලැබෙන දේවල් විතරක් නෙමෙයි. හරි? අපි තව ගොඩක් behaviors අපේ life time එකෙන් ඉගෙන ගන්නවා. ඒවා motivation එකක් නැතුව තමයි අපි ඉගෙන ගන්න. හරි? ඇත්තට ඒක දැන් අපි අර කීදි කිව්වට behavioristic approach එකේ කියනවා අරකෝ අපිට rewards තියෙන්න ඕනේ කියලා, stimulus තියෙන්න ඕනේ කියලා. හරි? rewards හරි punishment හරි මොන හරි තියෙන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට තමයි අපි යම්කිසි ආකාරයකට behave කරන්නේ, හැසිරීමක් වෙන්නේ, respond කරන්නේ. හරි? නමුත් මේ theory එකේ කියනවා හැමතිස්සෙම එහෙම ඕනේ නැහැ. හරි? අපි ජීවත් වෙනකොට, right, we learn lot of behaviors as we go, as we live, right? But we don't demonstrate those behaviors, right? We learn those behaviors even without the motivation, right? But one day, if we have the opportunity, right? If you receive the opportunity, then you will do it effectively. ඔයාට ඒ opportunity එක ලැබුණොත් ඔයා ඒක සාර්ථකව කරනවා. නමුත් ඉගෙන ගන්න හැම දෙයක්ම අපි demonstrate කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක තමයි කියන්නේ. Right? So those are the main points in relation to cognitive approach. Right? I want you to read more on these approaches. Here we have the limitations of cognitive approach. Right? Now, the main disadvantage of this approach is that it refers to cognitive processes that we cannot directly observe, right? It relies heavily on inference. That is true, right? This approach, right? It refers to cognitive process which is invisible. It relies heavily on inferences. Since it is difficult to observe these internal functions, the researchers use external features that they believe related to the internal process. In doing this, researchers have to infer that the internal processes which they want to investigate actually related to the recorded behavior without having any evidence of this connection. So that is the main weakness, right? And this approach, it failed to account for environmental and biological or genetical influence on human behavior. And it ignores the individual differences and assume that all internal processes is same in different people. And third one is, again, use the reductionist approach. It is a term, as I explained earlier, it is a term simply used to describe theories that oversimplify human behavior. They focus only one part. So this cognitive approach, cognitive theory, it is a reductionist as it focuses only on cognitive functions. And another big problem is it is difficult to measure internal processes such as attention and perception because they are invisible. It relates to the first one. All of these mental processes, right? This attention, perception, personalities, right? Attitudes, values, emotions, beliefs, all of those things are analyzed, the way they analyze, right? All of those things are invisible processes. So it is very difficult to measure those cognitive functions. Can you explain again the second point under the limitation? Yes, I will explain again. This theory, it ignores other factors, right? What are the other factors? Environmental factors, right? The social factors, for example, the way we grow up, right? The things that we learn from the environment, the cultural factors, right? The role of those things as well as the biological or genetical influence on human behavior. This cognition, that is also influenced by this biological and genetic factors, but they did not discuss those things, right? Role of those things within this research, right? Now, as we discussed under the first session, three main factors influence human behavior, right? The first one is cognition, right? Under the cognition, we identified knowledge, this and the learning, experience, and the emotions, right? Desires, all of those things comes under the cognition. And then we, as the second factor, we discuss about the biological or the hereditary factors, genetic factors, right? And third one is the environmental factors. All of those factors play very important role in determining human behavior. But this cognitive approach, it focuses only the cognitive factors, ignore other environmental factors as well as the genetic or hereditary factors, right? That is the second point, right? Is it clear?
Yes, madam.
Any other question? Any other question in relation to this theory?
No, madam, it's clear.
Right. Okay. Then, right now it's 2:25. Before moving to the next theory, right? It's the social learning framework. There are a lot of things to discuss under this theory. Before moving to the theory, you can have the break, right? The 15 minutes break.
Thank you, madam.
Right. So now it's 2:25. I will give you 15 minutes, right? So we will start the class at 2:40. Come back, right?
Okay, madam.
Recording stopped.
Shall we start? Shall we start the class?
Yes, madam, we can.
Right.
Recording in progress.
Now, this is the third behavioristic theory, social learning theory or the social cognitive theory. Psychologist Albert Bandura developed the social learning theory as well as social cognitive theory. This actually the social learning theory, it was introduced in 1965 and it developed into social cognitive theory in 1986, right? And this social cognitive theory, it proposed that behavior and learning occurs, human behavior and learning occurs in a social context with a dynamic reciprocal interaction of the person, environment, and the behavior, right? So there are three main factors. I will explain those things in detail later. So don't afraid of words, right? So according to this theory, behaviors, human behaviors and learning occurs in a social context with a dynamic reciprocal interaction of the person, then the environment and the behavioral factors, right? Social learning theory, it proposed that we acquire new behaviors by observation, right? How we acquire new behaviors, we learn new behaviors by observation. Here, the word of social refers to the influence of social interaction. Social means the influence of social interactions on how we acquire new behaviors. Social cognition, according to that, there is a broader, it is a broader concept, right? This social cognition, it is a broader concept and it acknowledges the role played by cognition in determining human behavior. According to the social learning theory, first one, right? According to the theory which was introduced in 1965, not according to the social cognitive theory, according to the social learning theory, we acquire new behaviors by observation, right? That theory did not discuss the role of the cognition. But the social cognitive theory, it is a broader one and it acknowledges the role played by cognition in determining human behavior, right? ඉස්සර වෙලා මේ social learning theory එකේ development එකක් තමයි social cognitive theory කියලා කියන්නේ. එතකොට ඉස්සර වෙලා ආපු මේ theory එකේ social learning theory එකේ කතා කරේ මිනිසුන්ට අපි අනිත් අයව observe කරලා ඉගෙන ගන්නවා කියන එක විතරයි. හරි එතනදී කතා කරේ නෑ මේ cognition එකේ role එක. but මේ බන්දුරා නැවත මේක අලුත් කරලා revise කරලා ගේනවා. ඒකේ යා මේ roles දෙකම ගැන කතා කරනවා. Right? According to the social cognitive theory, human behaviors are determined by or product of observation, right? The observation represents environmental factors, then the cognitive factors and the behavioral factors, right? Now here, I will explain the meaning of the behavior within this framework later, right? According to the social cognitive theory, human behaviors are product of three main factors. First one, environmental factors, right? So under that, we discuss this observational learning and then product of cognitive factors as well as product of behavioral factors, right? And it proposed that we acquire new behaviors simply by observing it along with its consequences, right? We acquire new behaviors, we learn new behaviors simply by observing it along, right? Simply by observing those behaviors and their consequences. And cognitive factors play important role with the environmental factors or this observational learning in the acquisition of how behavior, in the acquisition of new behaviors and its production. එතකොට මෙතනදී cognition එක සම්බන්ධ වෙන්නේ දැන් මේ theories දෙකෙන්ම කියන්නේ අපි observe කරලා තමයි මේවා ඉගෙන ගන්නෙ. නමුත් ඒ observe කරන process එක තුල මේ cognition එක ඉතා ලොකු role එකක් play කරනවා කියලා තමයි කියන්නේ. Right? It consider how both the environmental and cognitive factors interact to influence human behavior and learning. He accepts the relationship between stimulus and responses also. But he paid attention to the mediation process or the cognitive process which precedes the responses, actions and reactions. Now, when we discuss this classical conditioning theory as well as the operant conditioning theory, we saw that under the classical conditioning theory, stimulus leads to responses, right? Under the operant conditioning theory, responses lead to stimulus, right? But they didn't discuss the mediation role that the cognition play. මේ මනසෙන් සිද්ධ වෙන මේක තුල හරි මේ ක්‍රියාදාමය තුල මනසේ රෝල් එක ඒගොල්ලෝ මෙන්ටල් ප්‍රොසෙස් එක ඒගොල්ලෝ ඩිස්කස් කරේ නැහැ. හරි දැන් බන්දුරා this Albert Bandura, he accept that response stimulus relationship, right? The relationship between stimulus and responses. But he paid attention to the mediation process or the cognitive process which precedes the responses, actions and reactions. Bandura believes that humans are active information processors and think about the relationship between their behavior and its consequences. Right? They are active information processors and they think about the relationship between their behaviors as well as the consequences of those behaviors. Right? These information processors, they cannot occur unless cognition processes are at work. Right? Information process කරන්න පුළුවන් අපේ මනස වැඩ කරන්නේ නැතුව බෑ. Right? So this mental factor, the cognitive factor intervene to determine the behavior. Therefore, individuals do not automatically observe the behavior of others and imitate it. They think prior to the imitation, right? Even though people learn by observing the behavior of other people and the consequences, they have to think about these things, right? They think prior to imitation. We learn a lot of things from other people, right? But in order to do the same thing, right? In order to act like others, first we think, right? Before the imitation, first we think whether they are suitable for our situations or not. දැන් අපි අනිත් අයගේ දැන් මේ theory එකෙන් කියන්නේ මිනිස්සු සමාජයේ ඉන්න අනිත් අයගේ behaviors observe කරලා ඒ experiences වලින් ඉගෙන ගන්නවා කියලා. හරි එතකොට අපිට අපි නිකන් දැකලා ඒවම කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැනේ. හරි imitate කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. අපි අනිත් අය දිහා බලලා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ behaviors ඒවට ලැබුණු consequences positive and negative මේවා analyze කරලා තමයි අපි මේ යම්කිසි ආකාරයකට අපේ behavior එකට එක බලපෑමක් වෙනවා නම් තීරණය කරන්නේ. එතකොට මෙයා ඒ process එකත් එයා recognize කරනවා එයාගේ theory එක ඇතුලේ. Right? Now look at this. Right? Look at this. As I explained earlier, this theory focuses on how individuals initiate and maintain a given behavior by emphasizing the role of interactions among various cognitive, environmental, and behavioral factors. So, according to this theory, human behaviors are product of these cognitive behavioral factors, then the environmental factors and the personal factors or cognitive factors, right? Here the personal means the cognitive factors, right? Human behaviors are determined by these three factors, right? So what are the factors? Outcomes or behavioral factors, then the environmental factors or social influences, and the personal factors or cognitive factors, right? I will start from this point, right? Cognitive factors. These cognitive factors, they reflect various mental processes that occur within the individual, right? Such as goals, right? And then we have emotions, feeling of self-efficacy, outcome expectations, right? And these factors are also known as personal factors, right? As I explained earlier. Because they are known as personal factors because it includes all the individual's expectations, right? Beliefs, values, and his or her unique personality characteristics, right? The personality, that is also a cognitive factor, and the behavioral capabilities, right? The cognitive or the personal factor includes goals, right, of individuals, beliefs, values, attitudes, then their unique personality characteristics and self-efficacy and behavioral capabilities. What do you mean by behavioral capability? Behavioral capability refers to a person's actual ability to perform a behavior through knowledge and skills. In order to successfully perform a behavior, a person should know what to do and how to do it, right? Those things are also knowledge, experience, and skills. Those things are also comes under personal or cognitive factors, right? We know that. Now we know that these cognitive factors or personal factors such as goals of the people, beliefs, values, attitudes, personality characteristics, and the behavioral capability, which reflect the knowledge, skills, and competencies of a person to perform a certain behavior. All of those things influence the behavior of a person. එතකොට අපි දන්නවා මේ පුද්ගලයෙකුගේ හැසිරීම තීරණය කරන්න. හරි? එයාගේ දැනුම, හැකියාවන්, එයාගේ ආකල්ප, විශ්වාසයන්, ඊට පස්සේ එයාගේ goals, එයාගේ motives, හරි, expectations, මේ සියල්ලම බලපානවා පුද්ගලයෙක්ගේ චර්යාව තීරණය කරන්න කියලා අපි දැන් දන්නවා. Right? So those are the cognitive factors, right? Next, we have environmental factors, right? The second factor is social influences or environmental factors. Here, the environment, right? Environment represent any factor physically external to the individual that can impact his or her behavior, right? Any factor physically external to the individual that can impact his or her behavior. එතකොට මේ cognitive නොවන අනිත් සියලුම ආකාරයේ factors, right? අපි environmental factors විදියට මෙතනදී සලකනවා, right? So this environment consists of two types of factors, social factors as well as physical factors, right? Social factors such as models to follow, right? We have heroes, right? Now, give me 1 minute. Models to follow. Now these models might be the leaders of the organization, managers of the organization, seniors, then your colleagues, right? Maybe a recognized person in the society. So models to follow, it is one of the social factor. Then instructions from family members, friends, teachers, and other parties. And next we have feedback received from those parties, right? Attitudes, values, beliefs, and ideas of other parties also influence your behavior. Instructions received from the other parties, as well as feedback received from other parties, and the models to follow influence behavior of people, right? That is the second factor. Now, we have, in addition to the social factors, we have the physical factors, right? Physical factors also influence the behavior. The second part of the environment, right? The first part, social factors, models, instruction, and feedback are social factors. Now, what are the physical factors? Now, if you take, for example, I will explain the physical factors with examples, right? For example, if I take a behavior such as smoking, right, in the workplace. Now, the behavior is smoking in the workplace. Availability of tobacco. It is a factor that influences that particular behavior, right? If the behavior is late attendance and early departures from work, right? Then the physical factor is availability of transport. Those physical factors also comes under environmental factors, right? All of those social and physical factors influence to determine a behavior of a person, right? එතකොට මෙතනදී මොනවාද කියන්නේ social environment එක අපිට කොටස් දෙකකට බෙදන්න පුළුවන් social factors and අනිත් එක physical factors කියලා. social factors කියන්නේ දැන් මෙතනදී අපි කියනවානේ අපි අනිත් මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ඉගෙන ගන්නවා කියලා. behaviors හොඳ හෝ නරක අපි අනිත් අයගෙන් ඉගෙන ගන්නවා. එතකොට මේ models තියෙනවානේ අපිට ඉගෙන ගන්න. හරි? එතකොට ඒ ඉගෙන ගැනීමට තරම් ශක්තිවත් මොඩල් එකක් තියෙන කට්ටිය ඉන්න ඕනේ. Right? ඊට පස්සේ instructions and feedback, I will explain these things again later. Right? මේ අනිත් අයගෙන් ලැබෙන, right? Instructions and feedback, right? That a person receive from the leaders of the organization, employers, managers, colleagues, right? And other expert professionals. All of those things influence their behavior, right? So that is the environmental factor. And third factor is the behavior, right? It refers how the individual react to various input from their social and physical environment. Actually, this part covers the motivation means the consequences or the rewards, right? Or punishment or any other thing comes under this outcomes or behaviors, right? Consequences of behaviors. This has the same idea similar to the this behavioristic framework, right? So according to this one, the consequences, goals or motives, right, or the stimulus, right, influence the behavior of people, right? This Albert Bandura considered almost all the factors that determine the behavior of human beings. He accept, as I explained earlier, he accept the relationship between this stimulus and responses. That's why he talked about this factor, behavioristic factor. And in addition to that factor, he add the role of the cognitive factors in determining the human behavior. And the unique introduction was the including of social or environmental factors, right? This theory is the first theory who discuss the role of observational learning, right? The role of observation in determining a person's behavior. එතකොට මේ බඳුරා මේක පිළිගන්නවා. අර stimulus and responses relationship එක පිළිගන්නවා. හරි? නමුත් ඊට අමතරව මෙයා කියනවා මේ cognition එක role play කරන role එක එයා කතා කරලා නැහැ කියලා ඒකත් එකතු කරනවා. හරි? එකතු කරලා මේ එක තියරි එකකින්වත් කතා කරපු නැති මේ observational learning. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි අපේ experience වලින් අපේ අත්දැකීම් වලින් හිතාමතා තීරණය කරනවා වගේම අපි අනිත් මිනිස්සු දිහා බලලා සමාජයේ අනිත් මිනිසුන්ගේ හැසිරීම් වලින් එයාලට ලැබෙන consequences වලින් එයාලගේ උපදෙස් වලින් හරි එයාලගේ feedback වලිනුත් අපේ behavior එක change වෙනවා behavior එක තීරණය වෙනවා කියලා අලුත් කැලලක් එකතු කරනවා. එතකොට මෙයාගේ මේ social cognitive framework එකට අනුව මේ human behavior එක කියන්නේ මේ සියලු දේවල් වලම එකතුවක්. හරි? Slide. So actually this before moving to that this to summarize this slide this human behavior they are determined by product of observations then the cognitive factors or personal factors, right? And the main new addition is, don't forget it, right? The new addition of this theory is we acquire new behavior simply by observing the behavior of others with their consequences, right? So that is the new addition, right? Right. Now, that is the summary of the this framework, and now let me to explain the Bobodol experiment. Right. During 1960s, Albert Bandura conducted a series of experiments on observable learning. Right? It is collectively all of these experiments they are collectively known as Bobodol Experiment. Right? Now I will show you a video. Right? Now let me stop this one and share the video. Is this visible?
Yes, madam.
Now watch this.
The segment you're about to see is taken from an early experiment on learning of aggressive styles of behavior through modeling. Children watched a filmed adult perform novel aggressive acts toward a inflated doll, and the physical aggression was accompanied by novel hostile remarks. We later measured how much of this modeled aggression the children had learned just by watching. Now, the measurement of learning of aggression uses simulated targets rather than live ones. For example, to test how well bombardiers have learned bombing strategies, you would use simulated targets rather than require them to bomb San Francisco or New York. The model pummeled the doll with a mallet, flung it in the air, kicked it repeatedly, threw it down, and beat it. It was once widely believed that seeing others vent aggression would drain the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to aggressive modeling is hardly cathartic. Exposure to aggressive modeling increased attraction to guns, even though it was never modeled. Guns had less appeal to children who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling. The children also picked up the novel hostile language. The room contained varied play materials.
If you want, you can watch the whole video. It's there in the internet, the whole experiment, right? Now, let me share the PowerPoint presentation. Right. Can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, madam.
Can one of you explain the video? We have around 60 students here, right? All of them are managers. Can one of you explain the video which you watched a few minutes ago? What you learned from the video? Actually, the purpose of test. Yes, so why they behaved violently? Because they observed the behavior of the adult, right? Yes, that is the reason. Actually, thank you very much, right? The purpose of this video was to examine whether the social behavior, that is behavior of other people, can be learned by observing and imitating, right? Imitations. Albert Bandura tested 36 boys and 36 girls from the Stanford University nursery, aged between 3 to 6, right? The researchers, they pre-tested the children for how aggressive they were by observing their behaviors in the nursery. And during the experiment, out of those 76 boys and girls, they selected 36 boys and 36 girls, right? Altogether 72 children. 12 boys and girls, 12 girls, right? 24 boys, girls and boys. They watched a male or female model behaving aggressively, right? 12 boys and 12 girls. Altogether, 24 girls and boys watched a male or female model behaving aggressively towards a toy called Bobodol. Right? That's why they named this experiment as Bobodol Experiments. Right? The adults attacked the Bobodol. You can see here also. Right? The adult attacked the Bobodol in a distinctive manner. What happened? What happened?
It was imitated by the little ones?
Yes, it was imitated by the little one. Right? Actually, give me 1 minute to drink some water. Thank you. Right? Actually, these adults, some of them used a hammer. In some cases, and others threw the doll in the air and shouted "pow boom." Right? The sound was "pow boom." And another 24 children were exposed to a non-aggressive model who played in a quiet manner for 10 minutes. And the final 24 children out of those 72 were used as a control group and not exposed to any model. At the end, they found that the children observed the aggressive model shows more imitative aggressive responses than those who were in the non-aggressive or control groups. The girls also, you saw that, the girls also showed more physical aggressive responses. They imitated adults, as your friend explained, right? They imitated adults and pumped the Bobodol, right? The conclusion was children were able to learn social behavior such as aggression through the process of observational learning, through watching the behavior of another person. It supported Bandura's social learning theory. එතකොට මේක තමයි එයාගේ එක main experiment එක. හරි. එතකොට එයා දැක්කා මේගොල්ලෝ මෙයාගේ මේ adult ගේ behavior එක දැකපු සමහර දරුවෝ හරි ඊට වඩා aggressive ලෙස හැසිරුණා. girls ලා විතර boys ලා විතරක් නෙමෙයි girls ලා බොහොම aggressive විදිහට හැසිරුණා කියලා කියනවා. නමුත් අර බොහොම quiet environment එක ඒ වෙනම විදිහක ෆිල්ම් එකක් watch කරපු අයවත් control group එකේ අයවත් මේ වගේ behavior එකක් දක්වලා නැහැ. හරි. එතකොට ඒකෙන් එයාගේ conclusion එක උනේ මේ observe කරලා බොහෝ දේවල් ඉගෙන ගන්නවා කියලා මිනිස්සු සමාජය තුලින්. හරි. ළමයි විතරක් නෙමෙයි අපි සියලු දෙනාම බොහෝ දේවල් ඉගෙන ගන්නවා කියලා මේ observations තුලින්. ඒක තමයි මේකේ conclusion එක උනේ. right? ඒක තමයි එයාගේ එක main experiment එක. right?
Yes.
Now look at this. Yes.
Excuse me, madam. Can we call it as observational learning?
Yes. That is the observational learning. You are correct. It is the observational learning. Right? I will discuss about observational learning again, right? Now, look at this. These are the three main concepts in this framework. First, as I explained earlier, people can learn new behaviors through observing the behavior of others and consequences for their behaviors, right? We learn things from others, right? If we start from our home, small children, they learn lot of things from others, right? From siblings, from parents, from other elders, right? And from neighbors, from the friends, right? When it comes to the workplace, in the organization, they observe the behavior of managers, their leaders, employees, colleagues, and learn lot of things, right? And they sometimes, right, not always, they evaluate the consequences also. They look at how others behave and the consequences. And based on that, they decide to imitate those behaviors or not, right? But they can learn through observation, right? The second one is internal mental status are an essential part of this process. Internal mental status such as expectations, goals, self-efficacy. We are going to discuss those concepts in detail, right? Expectations, goals, self-efficacy. Self-efficacy means the person's confidence in his or her ability to successfully perform the behavior, right? A person's confidence in his or her ability to successfully perform the behavior, that is the self-efficacy, right? So the mental status such as expectations, goals, self-efficacy, then the personality of a person, attitudes, values and beliefs and other mental processes, all of those things influence a person to behave in a certain way. That is the second point, right? And third one, look at third one, that is also very important. Learning does not necessarily lead to behavioral change. Now, what is this? Learning does not necessarily lead to behavioral change. Observational learning demonstrates that people can learn new information without demonstrating new behaviors, right? People can learn new things, new information without demonstrating new behaviors. That is true. We learn lot of things, right? But we don't demonstrate those behaviors, right? Sometimes social learning is not successful. In order to learn a new behavior successfully, if it is a good one, right? Individuals should follow several steps, right? In order to learn a new behavior successfully, individuals should follow a few steps, right? It is a 4-step process according to this theory, right? First one, attention. Now you can see here, right? First one, attention. In order to learn, you need to pay attention, right? Anything that distracts your attention is going to have a negative effect on observational learning, right? In order to learn something well, you should pay your attention, right? If something distracts your attention, then it will have a negative impact on your learning. So in order to learn behaviors from others, in order to learn things from others, you must dedicate your full attention to learning, right? To the behavior of the other person, right? That is the attention. The second one is retention. Second step is retention. You know that ability to store information. Ability to store information, that is also important part of the learning process. The ability to pull up the information later and act on it, they are also vital to observational learning. දැන් රිටෙන්ෂන් කියන්නේ දැන් ඉගෙන ගන්නනේ ඔයා දැක්කනේ දෙයක්. ඒක ඔයාගේ ඔළුව ඇතුලේ තියාගන්නත් ඕනේ. මතකයේ ඇතුලේ. හරි? ඒ විතරක් නෙමෙයි. ඕන වුණාම මේක එළියට ඇදලා අරගෙන ඒකට අනුව වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නත් ඕනේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ ඔබ්සර්වේෂනල් ලර්නින් එක සාර්ථක වෙන්නේ නැහැ. Right? The third one is reproduction. Third stage is reproduction. Once you have paid the attention to the model, right? The behavior of another person and retain the information, it is timely, next step is to actually perform the behavior you observed. It improves your skills in the selected behavior, right? Once you have paid the attention to the model, right? Once you learn a social behavior and then retain the information. Next, you have to perform the behavior that you observed in order to learn it properly, right? It will, when you perform that particular behavior again and again, then it will improve your skill in the selected behavior. That is the reproduction, right? That is the third stage, reproduction, right? And the fourth one, it is the motivation. Final stage is motivation. Finally, in order for observational learning to be successful, you have to be motivated to imitate the behavior that has been modeled, right? Reinforcement and punishment play an important role in motivation. For example, if you see another employee rewarded with a foreign training program, right, for exerting extra work, extra effort to perform his job, you might start to do the same thing, right? I will tell it again. If you see another employee in your workplace rewarded with a foreign training program or a promotion or challenging job, right, project, for exerting extra effort to perform his job, you might start to do the same thing. Now, දකින්න ඔයාගේ colleague කෙනෙක්, එයා හරි මහන්සියලා වැඩ කරන කෙනෙක්, එයා කරන්න ඕනේ දේවල් වලට අමතරවත් තවල් දේවල් කරනවා මහන්සි වෙලා, ඒ වෙනුවෙන් එයාට ලොකු රිවෝඩ් එකක් හම්බ වෙනවා. හරි? ඒක දැක්කලා ඔයත් හිතනවා ඔයත් මහන්සි වෙලා වැඩ කරොත් ඔයාටත් මේ වගේ දෙයක් ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. ඒ හින්දා එයා ඉමිටේට් කරමින් ඒ වගේ මහන්සි වෙලා වැඩ කරන්න පටන් ගන්නවා. Right? For another example, if you heard that another employee is fired for taking bribes and manipulating accounts, right? Then you might decide not to involve in such behavior. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයාට ඇහෙන්න පුළුවන් එක සේවකෙක්ව අයින් කරලා, අස් කරලා, නඩුත් දාලා මොනවා හින්දාද? එයා bribes අරගෙන සහ accounts වෙනස් කරලා organization එකේ. misbehavior. හරි? ඒකට ලැබිච්ච දඬුවම, එයාට ලැබිච්ච consequences දැකලා ඔයා බය වෙනවා. හරි? මේක මම කවදාවත් කරන්නේ නැහැ කියලා තීරණය කරනවා. ඒ වගේ behavior එකකට නම් මට යන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. Right? So, learning actually does not necessarily lead to behavioral change. It must go through the above mentioned stages. එකපාරට අපි දැක්කා කියලා අපි මොනවත් කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. හරි? අපි මෙන්න මේ ස්ටේජ් එකේ අපි දකින්න ඕනේ, දකපු දේ ඔළුව ඇතුලේ තියාගන්න ඕනේ. හරි? ඊට පස්සේ අපි ඒක ප්‍රැක්ටිස් කරන්නත් ඕනේ. ඒක මේ ගන්න නම් ඒ behavior එක ඇති වෙන්න නම් අපිට මොකක් හරි හේතුවක් තියෙන්නත් ඕනේ. යමක් avoid කරන්න හරි, යමක් ලබා ගන්න හරි goal එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ, motive එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ, expectation එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ demonstrate කරන්න අපි ඉගෙන ගත්ත behavior එක. හරි? එතකොට මේ ඔක්කොම සම්පූර්ණ වුණේ නැත්නම් behavior එකක් සාර්ථක වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක අපි ඉගෙන ගත්තට, අපි දැනගෙන හිටියට ඒක අපේම behavior එකක් බවට පත් වෙලා එළියට එන්නේ නැහැ කියලා තමයි කියන්නේ මේ process එක ඇතුලේ. Right? Right. Next one. Right? Major theoretical components. Here we have the major theoretical components of social cognitive theory. They are modeling, outcome expectations, self-efficacy, goal setting, and self-regulation. First one is modeling. It proposes that a portion of an individual's knowledge and then the behavior can be directly related to observing others within the context of social interaction and experiences. The theory states that when people observe a model, right, this model may be anybody, right, in the organizational context, maybe a leader or employer, not manager, colleague, right, or any other person, right? The theory states that when people observe a model performing a behavior and the consequences of that behavior, they remember the sequence of events and use this information to guide their subsequent behavior. Right? That is the modeling, right? It proposed that portion of an individual's knowledge and then the behavior can be directly related to observing others within the context of social interactions and experiences. එතකොට මොකක්ද මොඩලින් වලදී කියන්නේ පුද්ගලයෙකුගේ චර්යාවෙන් එක කොටසක් ඒ behaviors වලින් එක කොටසක් තීරණය වෙනවා. ඒ චර්යාව තීරණය වෙන එක ආකාරයක් තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ අනිත් අයව ඔබ්සර්ව් කරලා අනිත් අයගේ behaviors ඒවට එන consequences බලලා ඒව ඇනලයිස් කරලා ඔබ්සර්ව් කරලා තමන්ගේ behavior ඒකට අනුව කරන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා තීරණය කරනවා. That is the first one, modeling, right? Second important concept is outcome expectations. This refers to the anticipated consequence of a person's behavior. It means that people anticipate consequences of their actions before engaging in the behavior. And these consequences, right? It is similar to this, the Operand Conditioning theory, right? It means that people anticipate consequences of their outcomes before engaging in the behavior. And these consequences, they can influence successful completion of the behavior. මොකක්ද මෙතන කියන්නේ මිනිස්සු යම්කිසි behavior එකක නිරත වෙන්න ඉස්සර වෙලා ඒ behavior එක නිසා ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන් consequences. එතකොට මේකේ outcome expectation කියන්නේ ඒ consequences වලට. හරි? එතකොට මම යම්කිසි විදිහක චර්යාවක් තීරණය කරන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා මගේ හැසිරීම තීරණය කරන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා මේ හැසිරීමේ ප්‍රතිඵලය. ඒක තමයි outcome expectation එක. ඒක behavior එකේ consequences මොකක්ද කියලා මම බලනවා. Right? These expectations or the consequences derived largely from our own previous experiences. Right? Sometimes we learn those things from the experience of other people also. Right? So, to learn a behavior, right? People must understand what the potential outcome as if they repeat the behavior. මම මෙන්න මේ ආකාරයට හැසිරුණොත් එහෙම මට මේ හැසිරීමට මොන වගේ outcome එකක් මොන වගේ consequence එකක් ලැබෙයිද කියන එක හිතලා තමයි එයාලගේ behavior එක තීරණය කරන්න කියන එක තමයි මේ outcome expectation එකෙන් කියන්නේ, right? The third important point is self-efficacy. Now, what is this? It is the level of a person's confidence in his or her ability to successfully perform the behavior, right? Self-efficacy, it is the level of person's confidence in his or her ability to successfully perform the behavior. Now, I will explain this in detail with the next slide. However, you know that if we believe in ourselves, right? If you believe in your knowledge, your experience, your skills and capabilities, that confidence, right? It influences your behavior positively, right? And if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe in your skills, your capabilities, your knowledge and experiences, if you have negative attitudes towards yourself, then those things will influence negatively to your behavior, right? So that is the self-efficacy, how self-efficacy influences the behavior of an individual. You should believe in yourself, right? You should have positive attitudes toward yourself. I am capable. I have knowledge, right? I have experiences. And there are people to support me, right? So I can do it successfully. I have the capability to do that. You should believe in yourself. You should believe in your capabilities, skills, experience, and knowledge, right? If you believe in yourself, you have positive attitudes toward yourself, right? You behave differently, right? From people who don't believe in themselves. තමන් ගැන විශ්වාස කරන්නේ නැතිනම් තමන්ගේ හැකියාවන් ගැන තමන්ගේ දක්ෂතාවයන් ගැන දැනුම ගැන හරි විශ්වාසයක් නැත්නම් ඒ පුද්ගලයාගේ බොහොම හීන පෞරුෂයක් තියෙනවා. එතකොට එයා කරන කියන සියලුම දේවල් වලට එයාගේ සියලුම behaviors වලට ඒක බලපානවා. හරි? ඒක මේක හරි ලස්සන concept එකක් මේ social cognitive theory එක ඇතුලේ තියෙනවා. But if you believe in yourself, right, it will influence you positively. Right? If you don't believe in yourself, it will influence negatively. Right? That is the self-efficacy. Then we have the goal setting. Goal setting reflects that individuals are active agents in their environments and can determine their own behaviors. It is also true. Goal setting enables individuals to determine standards of self-performance. Based on this theory, people select certain type of behaviors since those behaviors help them to achieve their goals. So setting an achievement of goals can have a positive and profound positive impact on learning new behaviors. We should have goals. We behave in a certain way in order to achieve goals. Right? In order to achieve needs. So this setting goals as well as the need to achieve those goals can have positive and profound positive impact on learning new behaviors. Right? ඒක තේරෙනවනේ ඔයාලට අපි යම්කිසි ආකාරයක හැසිරෙන්නේ මොකක් හරි අරමුණකට purpose එකකට goal එකකට හරි මොකක් හරි දෙයක් ළඟා කරගන්න හරි ඒක මොනිටරි වෙන්නත් පුළුවන් non monetary වෙන්නත් පුළුවන් වෙනත් ඕනෑම දෙයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් මොකක් හරි goal එකක් achieve කරගන්න තමයි අපි යම්කිසි ආකාරයකට හැසිරෙන්නේ එතකොට මේ අපිට goals තියෙනවනේ අපිට expectations තියෙනවනේ අපි ඒවා decide කරලා ඒවා achieve කරගන්න උවමනාව තියෙනවනේ ඒක අපේ behavior එකට බලපානවා කියලා කියනවා කවුද Albert Bandura. Right? Next one is the fifth one is self-regulation. That is also very interesting and fascinating concept, right? It represents an individual's ability to control their own behaviors. You know that we have that ability, right? He mentioned that, Albert Bandura mentioned that individuals set standards of performance for themselves. They judge their own behaviors and determine whether or not it meets their self-determined criteria. That is true. You know that all of us have personal standards for success. We have our own standards for behaviors and misbehaviors. Based on their now we know that what to do and what not to do. We determine it. We decide what to do and what not to do. ඔයාලා දන්නවනේ ඒක අපි තමයි තීරණය කරන්න ඕනේ මොනවද නැත්te මොනවද කියලා. හරි? අපි හදනවා අපිට ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ්ස්. හරි? ඔයා අනිත් අයට හර්ට් කරනවද? හැරස් කරනවද? මැනිපියුලේට් කරනවද? ඕගනයිසේෂනල් පොලිටික්ස් යූස් කරනවද? මහන්සි වෙලා වැඩ කරනවද? වෙලාවට වැඩට යනවද? හරි? මේ ඔක්කොම තීරණය වෙන්නේ මොනව මතද? අපිට හදාගත්තු අපේ ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ්ස් වලට අනුව. If you believe that you should work on time, go to the work on time, you should believe in punctuality, then it influences your behavior. දැන් වෙලාවට වැඩ කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා ඔයා ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එකක් හදාගෙන තියෙනවා නම් ඔයා වෙලාවට වැඩ කරනවා. හරි? එතකොට මේ මිනිසුන්ගේ තියෙන මේ capability එක recognize කරනවා මේ theory එකේ. අපි හදා ගන්නවා අපිට standards. හරි? පන්තියට එනවද? ඇවිල්ලා attendance පෙන්නලා වෙන වැඩක් කරනවද ගෙදර? හරි මේකට actively involve වෙනවද? passively involve වෙනවද? ඒ ඔයාගේ stand determined by your own standards. Performance standards. හරි? learn කරනවද නැද්ද? හරි? ඒ ඔක්කොම තීරණය වෙන්නේ අපි personally අපි හදාගන්න standards වලින්. හරි? අපි තමයි තීරණය කරන්නේ අපේ behavior එක අපි නොකරන්නේ මොනවද කරන්නේ මොනවද. So the ability of human beings to control their own behavior, it influences the way they behave. මේක මේ theory එකේ න හරි ලස්සන දේවල් ගොඩාක් ලස්සන දේවල් මේ ඇල්බර්ට් බන්දුරා ඉන්ට්‍රොඩියුස් කරනවා. ඒ cognitive theory එකේ. එයා කියනවා මිනිස්සුන්ට තියෙනවා මේ හරි ලොකු capacity එකක්. එයා ඒ behavior එක තීරණය කරන්න වගේම කල යුතු නොකල යුතු දේවල් තීරණය කරන්න self regulation වලට. එතකොට ඒ මත එයා behavior එක තීරණය කරනවා. Right? So those are the most important theoretical component of this theory.
Madam,
right?
excuse me.
Yes.
Can you please explain again the modeling?
Yes, I will. Right. Now, if I move back to the modeling, it proposes that this concept, it proposes that a portion of an individual's knowledge as well as the behavior directly related to observing others, right? Within the context of social interactions and experiences, right? It means that you learn by observing the behavior of others from your childhood, right? Within the organizational context, right? You observe the behavior of your employers. You observe the behavior of your managers and other leaders. And you observe the behavior of your colleagues. You observe not only their behaviors, but also consequences for their behaviors, right? So by observing the behavior of other people, here the models mean the others, right? This model may be anybody. Sometimes you may select a hero, a person that you like, right? A person that you believe in, and you will observe the behavior of that particular person and imitate his or her behaviors. That is the modeling, right? And this theory states that when people observe a model performing a behavior and the consequence of the behavior, they remember those things and then they use those information to guide their own behaviors. ඔය ටික තමයි කියන්නේ මොඩලින් වලදී. හරි මොඩල්ස් ලා කියන්නේ ඕනම කෙනෙක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි ඔබ්සර්ව් කරන. හරි? එතකොට අපි ඔබ්සර්ව් කරලා අපි දැකලා when we were small kids, right? Our models are our older siblings, right? Sisters or elder sisters or brothers. Our parents, mother or father. Then our neighbors, right? Relatives. In schools, the models may be your teachers, principals, or your friends, right? In the workplace also, you have people you like. Or not only, you learn not only from the people you like, but also the other people. You can learn from everybody, right? If you observe the behavior of those people. එතකොට අපි මේ මොඩල්ස් කියන්නේ අනිත් අය. අපි සමාජයේ ඉපදුන දවසේ ඉඳලම අපි මේක කරනවා. හරි? ඔය දැන් ඔය බද්දුරාගේ එක්සැම්පල් එක එක්ස්පෙරිමන්ට් එකේ දැක්කුවා වගේම චූටි කාලේ බලන්න අපේ චූටි ළමයි දැන් අපේ බබා right? ගෙදර ආච්චි අම්මට ඔක්කොම ආච්චි අම්මලට අම්මා කිව්වා. අපේ අම්මට කිව්වේ අම්මා. හරි? ඊට පස්සේ අපි කියන ඔක්කොම වචන යා කියනවා. අපි හැසිරෙන විදිහට හැසිරෙනවා. අපි කොණ්ඩේ පීරන විදිහට ඩෝල්ගේ කොණ්ඩේ පීරනවා. හරි? ඒකට කතා කරන දේවල් කතා කරනවා. එතනින් තමයි පටන් ගන්න. හරි? අපි සමාජයේ මොනවාද වෙන්නේ අනිත් අය මොනවාද කරන්නේ කියන්නේ කියලා බලාගෙන ඉඳලා හරි? ඒ process එක පොඩි කාලේදී විශේෂයෙන්ම තද බල ලෙස සිද්ධ වෙනවා. ඒ observational learning. හරි? ඒගොල්ලන්ට එච්චර හිතන්නත් බෑනේ ඒගොල්ලෝ බලලා තමයි ඉගෙන ගන්න. හරි? දකින්න ඔක්කොම හොඳද නරකද මොකද cognition එක develop වෙලා නැහැ චුටි කාලේදී. හරි? හොඳ නරක තීරණය කරන්න. හරි? ඒක නිසා යාලා දැකලා දකින්න දේවල් හොඳ ඕ නරක වුණත් සියල්ලම ඉමිටේට් කරනවා. හරි නරක වචනයක් වුණත් ඒකක් කියනවා. ඔයාලට මේ එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් එක දැන් තියෙන අයත් ඇති නැති අයත් ඇති ඔයාලට ඉස්සරහට ලැබේ. එතකොට අපි ලොකු වුණාම work places වල වුණත් if you have very good people in and around you, right? People who work hard, people who perform well, people who behave well. There are a lot of things that you can learn from them, right? So you observe their behaviors and the consequences for those behaviors. හොඳට වැඩ කරාම මහන්සි වෙලා වැඩ කරාම හරි යහපත් ගති පැවතුම් තිබ්බහම යාළට එන consequences මොනවද? ඒ වගේම නරකට හැසිරුණාම වැඩ කරේ නැති වුණාම එන consequences මොනවද? මේ ඔක්කොම දිහා බලලා ඉගෙන ගන්න පුළුවන්. හරි? එතකොට ඒක තමයි modeling කියලා කියන්නේ observational learning. Right? Is it clear? Is it clear?
Yes, madam. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Next, I will move to the self-efficacy. Right? Now, I took this concept separately because it is a very interesting and important concept within this theory. Here, the self-efficacy, it is the belief in one's, as I explained earlier, it is the belief in one's capabilities to organize and execute a certain job. Right? It is the extent to which an individual believes that they can master a particular skill. Individuals with high self-efficacy, they are more likely to believe they can master challenging problems and they can recover quickly from setbacks and disappointments. Individuals with low self-efficacy, they tend to be less confident and they don't believe that they can perform well, which leads them to avoid challenging tasks, right? So self-efficacy play a central role in behavior performance. Now, what does self-efficacy do? Right? The choices we make, the effort we put forth, how long we persist when difficulty arises, and how we feel. All of those things are influenced by self-efficacy. First one, the choices we make. Whether you accept a certain job or not, whether you behave in a certain way or not, all of those things are influenced by your self-efficacy. Whether you believe in yourself, whether you believe in your capabilities, your skills, and your knowledge and experiences. Whether you believe that you can perform that task, you can perform that behavior successfully or not. Right? So, the choices we make and the effort we put forth. Actually, if we believe that we can do something successfully, we have the capabilities to do it successfully, then we put our effort, right, to accomplish it successfully. But if we don't believe in ourselves, if we don't believe that we can do it properly, then we don't put effort to accomplish that particular task. අපි අපිව විශ්වාස කරන්නේ නැත්නම් අපි හිතන්නේ නැත්නම් අපිට යමක් කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා අපිට capabilities තියෙනවා කියලා අපි හිතන්නේ නැත්නම් අපි යමක් කරන්න වෙහෙසෙනවද? නෑ. අපි උත්සාහ කරන්නේ නෑ. හරි? ඒ හින්දා ඔයා කොච්චර දුරට ඔයා ගැන විශ්වාස කරනවද? ඔයාට යමක් කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා විශ්වාස කරනවද? ඒක බලපානවා ඔයා යම් කිසි දෙයකට දාන effort එකට. Right? And then how long we persist when difficulty arises. That is the resilient. Right? That is the resilient. Now, it is natural, right? All the people, right, including the Lord Buddha, face lot of difficulties, right? But we should have the ability to come back, right? Rise again. අපිට තියෙන්න ඕනේ අර අපි කියන්නේ බෝලයක් වතුරයට දාපුවම ඒක නැවත නැවත උඩ එනවනේ. අන්න අපිට හැකියාව තියෙන්න ඕනේ. අපි මිනිස්සු විදිහට ඉපදුනහම අපි ගාක් දේවල් වලට, පේන්ස් වලට, ඩිස්කරේජ්මන්ට් වලට, ප්‍රොබ්ලම්ස් වලට, කන්ෆ්ලික්ට්ස් වලට මුහුණ දෙනවා අපේ ජීවිත පුරාවට. හරි? ඒ මොනවා වුණත් අපිට නැවත නැගිටින්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ හරි ඉක්මනින්. That is the resilient. Right? Ability to come back to the previous situation. ආපහු නැවත තත්ත්වයේ යථා තත්ත්වයට පත්වීමේ හැකියාව තමයි resilient කියලා කියන්නේ. Right? You can do it if you believe in yourself. How long we persist when difficulty arises. Problems එනකොට කොයා කොච්චර දුරට අල්ලගෙන ඉන්නවද මේක අපේ වචන වලින් කියනවා. Right? The level of resilience, it is influenced by your self-efficacy. Right? If you believe in yourself, if you believe that you can do it, whatever happen, whatever the challenges that you face, right? You will accomplish it. Right? And how we feel. Our emotions. That is influenced by the self-efficacy. Right? The way we believe in ourselves. If we believe in ourselves, we will be happy, confident, encouraged. Right? But if we don't believe in ourselves, we will be sad, unhappy, right? And discouraged. So this self-efficacy, it influences our feelings, our emotions also. And then our behaviors. මේ self-efficacy. මේක හරි වැදගත්. ඔයාලා ඇත්තටම ඔයාලගේ තුල අනිත් අය තුල සහ දරුවන් තුල උනත් ඇති කරන්න ඕන දෙයක්. තමන් ගැන විශ්වාස කරන්න. හරි? තමන් ගැන, තමන්ගේ හැකියාවන් ගැන, දැනුම ගැන, ස්කිල්ස් ගැන, තමන්ට යමක් කළ හැකි බව කියන දැඩි විශ්වාසයම ඔයාට එන්වයරන්මන්ට් එක හදලා දෙනවා ඉස්සරහට යන්න. හරි? මේක හරි ලස්සන concept එකක්. You can practice it and your behaviors are heavily influenced by self-efficacy, the way you believe in yourself. Right? And here we have the sources of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy can be developed using these strategies. They are kind of strategies, right? First one, mastery experiences. This is the most powerful one. Successful experiences in your life, right? Will help you to believe in yourself, right? Believe in your capabilities and skills, and to believe that you can do something successfully. යමක් ඔයාට සාර්ථකව කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා විශ්වාස කරන්න බලපාන factors තමයි මේ තියෙන්නේ. Mastery. What do you mean by mastery? Mastery means comprehensive knowledge or skills in a particular area, right? Or a behavior. It is the personal experience of success. If you are successful in the past, if you have performed well in the past, then it will influence your self-efficacy, right? I have done it successfully in the past, so I know that I can do this now and in the future, right? It refers to the experiences one gain when they take on a new challenging job, right? And if you were successful in the past, right, in performing similar behaviors, right, similar jobs, then it will improve your self-efficacy. If you have past successful experience, it will increase your self-efficacy. That is the simple meaning, right? If you have past successful experience, then it will increase your self-efficacy. ඔයා මම අතීතයේදී කරපු ඔක්කොම දේවල් වලින් සාර්ථකයි, right? I did all of those things well, right? I performed all of my jobs well, right? So I can do this one also, right? I will do it. They have the ability. So that's how this mastery experiences helps to increase self-efficacy, right? The second one, that is the vicarious experiences. What do you mean by vicarious? Vicarious means experiencing the imagination through the feelings or actions of another person, right? Accomplishments modeled by someone else. Once Bandura mentioned that, Albert Bandura mentioned that, seeing people similar to oneself succeed by sustained effort raises observers' belief that they too possess the capabilities to master comparable activities to succeed. I will tell it again, right? This is one of the Bandura's statement, right? Seeing people similar to oneself succeed by sustained effort raises observers' belief that they too possess the capabilities to master comparable activities to succeed. It involves observing other people's successfully completing a task. When one has positive role models in their life, one is more likely to absorb at least a few of those possible beliefs about the self. Right? Then මෙතනදී මොකද්ද කියන්නේ vicarious experiences කියලා කියන්නේ අනිත් අයගේ experiences වලින් ඔයා ඉගෙන ගන්න ඔයා කොහොමද self efficacy වැඩි වෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඔයා දකිනවා ඔයා හා සමාන කට්ටිය people similar to oneself, people who have similar characteristics, right? Knowledge, experience and capabilities perform a similar type of job successfully. එතකොට ඔයා දකිනවා ඔයාගේ හා සමාන ලක්ෂණ තියෙන අය මේ කාර්යය ඉතා සාර්ථකව කරනවා. හරි? එතකොට ඔයා then you also believe that you can do it. Right? You have the capabilities, skills and knowledge to perform that task successfully similar to your model. අර ඔයා දැක්ක අය කෙනාට හා සමානවම ඔයාටත් මේ වැඩේ සාර්ථකව කරන්න පුළුවන්. එයා කරා නම් මටත් පුළුවන්. හරි? මමත් එයා වගේනේ. එයාටත් මට වගේමයි දැනුම තියෙන්නේ, මගේ වගේමයි ස්කිල්ස් තියෙන්නේ. ඔක්කොම මගේ වගේ. එහෙනම් එයාට පුළුවන් නම් මට මොකද? බැරි. හරි? So you think that you can do it. Right? You have the enough capabilities, knowledge and skill to perform that particular task or the job or the behavior. So it increases your self-efficacy, right? So that is the vicarious experiences. Then the third one, right? Social persuasion. What is the social persuasion? Receiving positive feedback while undertaking a complex task, right? It persuades a person to believe that they have the skills and abilities to succeed. Pep talk or encouragement, right? Receiving positive feedback while undertaking a complex task. This feedback encourages the people. It creates a belief in that person that he or she can do that job successfully. Make a කරන්න. Managers ලානේ ඔයාලා. එතකොට මේ ඔයාගේ subordinates ලාව encourage කරන්න පුළුවන් මේ feeling එක දීලා. Right? Give them feedback. Tell them they can do it. Right? If they perform well, you openly express your ideas. Give them positive feedback. It will increase their self-efficacy. මිනිස්සු හොඳට වැඩ කරනවා දැක්කම කියන්න. ඒව ඇතුලේ තියාගෙන ඉන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. හරි? well done කියලා, good job කියලා නිකන් පිටට තට්ටුවක් දැම්මත් ඇති. ඔයා ගොඩාක් monetary rewards දුන්නට වඩා යම්කිසි පුද්ගලෙක්ව motivate කරන්න. හරි? That improve their self-efficacy. Right? They believe that they have the skills and abilities to succeed because up to now you have done it properly. only positive feedback, not negative ones, right? Now, yes, now there's a problem, right? Negative feedback, right? They don't encourage people. Negative feedback actually you should give true feedback, right? The things that encourage people, that increase the self-efficacy of the people. Then negative feedback කිව්වහම ඔයා එතනින් අදහස් කරන්නේ ඔයා ඇත්ත කියනවා කියන එක. හරි? If you want to, if that particular person doesn't perform well, right? Then present it constructively, right? Not as negative feedback, right? Not as negative feedback. Negative විදිහට නෙමෙයි. නමුත් එයා හරියට perform කරේ නැතත් හරි එයාට බොහොම constructive විදිහට එයාව encourage වෙන විදිහට තමයි ඒ feedback එක දෙන්න ඕනේ. හරි? එතකොට negative feedback කියන එක ඇතුළෙම තියෙනවා අපි පුද්ගලයෙක්ව discourage කරන්න එයාගේ වැරදි කියනවා වගේ, දුර්වලතා කියනවා වගේ දෙයක්. හරි? නමුත් අපි ඒක කියන්න ඕනේ as managers we have to do it, right? But do it constructively, right? A negative කියන වචනෙම කියන්න එපා, right? You can support your people to perform well, right? You can expand their capabilities and skills, help them, right, to perform their jobs well, to behave well, right? So don't use this negative feedback to change the behavior of people if it is not essential. මේක අනිවාර්යෙන්ම වැදගත් නැත්නම් හරි ඔයා නරක behavior එකක් change කරන්න ඔයාට negative feedback භාවිතා කරන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් ඔයාට encourage කරන්න ඕන නම් යම්කිසි පුද්ගලයෙක්ව ඒ purpose එකම encourage කිරීම නම් ඔයා negative feedback භාවිතා කරන්න එපා. right? මම negative කියන වචනයටත් මට එච්චර මට හිතෙනවා එච්චර භාවිතය කරන්නේ හොඳ නැහැ කියලා. නමුත් මට තේරෙනවා මොකද ඔයා අදහස් කරේ කියලා. හරි? ඒ කියන්නේ යම් කිසි පුද්ගලයෙක් හරියට perform කරන්නේ නැත්නම් ඒක කියන එක වැරද්දක්ද වගේ දේ තමයි ඔයා අදහස් කරේ. නමුත් අපි constructively අපිට feedback දෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඔයාලා මතක තියාගන්න feedback දෙනකොට. හරි? encourage වෙන විදිහට. හරි? මොකද එහෙම නැත්නම් negative feedback දුන්නා කියලා ඒ පුද්ගලයාවත් ඔයාටවත් ආයතනයටවත් ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ දෙයක්. හරි? ඒ දුර්වලතා අයින් කරලා ඒවට උදව් කරන ගමන් එයාව encourage කරන්න තමයි feedback දෙන්න ඕනේ. right? So for example, a manager is telling a subordinate that they are capable of achieving greatness and that they should set out to achieve anything that their heart desires. Then they will try their best to perform that their jobs, right? Managers like all මතක තියාගන්න හරි මේ powerful personal qualities ඔයාලගේ ජීවිතවලට ළඟා කරගන්න මිනිස්සුත් එක්ක වැඩ කරනකොට. හරි? එතකොට මේ communication තුලින් පුළුවන් මිනිස්සුන්ට ගොඩක් දේවල් දෙන්න. right? Now a manager telling a subordinate that they are capable of achieving greatness and they should set out to achieve anything that their heart desires. It will encourage employees to perform their best. එතකොට ඒ වගේ දේවල් තමයි මිනිස්සුන්ව encourage කරන්නේ. හරි? ඒගොල්ලන්ට ඒ capable කියන වචනේම Taman දක්ෂයි කියන දේම එයාලට එයාලගේ strength හඳුනාගෙන weaknesses නැති කරගෙන ඉස්සරහට යන්න උදව් කරනවා. හරි? එතකොට මේ මිනිස්සුත් එක්ක වැඩ කරනකොට පරිස්සමෙන් වැඩි කරන්න. right? Finally, arousal, right? Or emotional and psychological status of a person influence the self-efficacy, right? The emotional, physical, and psychological well-being of a person can influence how they feel about their personal abilities in a particular situation. If you are not healthy physically, right? Then if you have a lot of health problems, right? then you don't believe that you can do something. You don't believe in yourself, right? And if you have mental or emotional problems, for example, if you are struggling with depression or anxiety, then it will reduce your self-efficacy. You will not believe in your capabilities or skills when you are struggling with depression or anxiety, right? So your emotions, then your psychological and physical status, all of those things influence your self-efficacy, right? If you are not healthy physically or mentally, then you don't believe in yourself, right? You don't believe in your capabilities and skills. You don't believe that you can do something successfully. You don't believe that you can perform a certain behavior, right? So those things influence what you do, your actions and your behaviors. Can you please explain about mastery of experience again? Yes, right? Now, what is this mastery of experiences? මොකක්ද ඒක? හරි මොකක්ද මම කිව්වේ mastery of experience කියලා කිව්වේ? It is your past experience simply, right? If you have past successful experience, it will increase your self-efficacy, right? You were successful in the past. You have performed all the jobs well, right? So if you have done well in the past, if you behaved well, right? If your performance are good, right? Throughout the past, then you believe in yourself. Since you are successful in the past, right? Since you have successfully completed similar challenging tasks in the past, right? Then you believe in yourself. Now, you can do this one also. You can perform this successfully now. Then, ඔයා අතීතයේදී ඔයාට තියෙන සාර්ථක අත්දැකීම් නම් හරි ඔයා දිගින් දිගටම සාර්ථකව මේ වගේ කාර්යයන් කරලා නම් ඔයා දැඩි ලෙස විශ්වාස කරනවා ඔයා ගැන, right? Because you were successful in the past, you have done similar jobs successfully, so you believe that you can do it, this one also. So that is the mastery of experience, right? Yes, mastery of experience, that is how we accommodate the past experience in the present scenario, right? Here we are talking about how the past experience influence our self-efficacy, right? How the success of past experience influence the way believe that whether we can do something or not. Then මෙතනදී අපි කතා කරන්නේ අපිට මේ past experience අපේ අතීතයේදී අපි සාර්ථක වුණාද නැද්ද කියන එක. හරි අපි අතීතයේදී දිගටම සාර්ථක වෙලා නම් අපි වර්තමානයේදීත් හිතනවා self efficacy, we defined it as the confidence that we have in our skills, abilities, right? The way we believe in ourselves, that the way we think that we can do something. Then self efficacy කියන්නේ අපේ විශ්වාසය අපිට යමක් සාර්ථකව කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. හරි අපි කොච්චර අපේ skills ගැන, අපේ abilities ගැන, අපේ competencies ගැන අපි ගැන අපිට විශ්වාසයක් තියෙනවද? සහ අපිට යමක් කරන්න පුළුවන් සාර්ථකව කියලා අපි විශ්වාස කරනවාද කියන එක තමයි self efficacy කියලා කියන්නේ. එතකොට මේ මෙතන mastery experiences කියලා කියන්නේ successful experiences in the past, right? How that influence our self-efficacy and then the behavior, right? If we were successful in the past, then we believe that in the present and the future also we can perform these things successfully. So it influences our, that thinking influence our behaviors, right? තේරුණාද ඒක වාට? Is that clear? Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes. Right. Okay. Now I will move to the limitations. Right. Now, this theory also, even though there are a lot of strength, right, of this particular theory, right, there are a lot of advantages of this theory because it covers almost all the factors that determine behaviors, but it also has limitations, right? This theory assumes that changes in the environment will automatically lead to changes in the person, when this may not always be true. This theory, it assumes that when something changes in the environment, right, within the social context, it will automatically lead to change the person. It will change the person when something changes in the external environment. It will influence the person and the person will change the behavior. But it is not always be true, right? Sometimes it will be true, but not always, right? The second one is this theory is loosely organized based solely on the dynamic interplay between person, behavior, and environment. It is unclear the extent to which each of these factors influence actual behavior, and if one is more influential than another. Actually, this theory, it discusses the role of all of these factors, right? But it is not clear, right? Which factor influence the most, right? It is not clear. මොන ෆැක්ටර් එකද වැඩිපුර බලපාන්නේ? ඒක මුකුත් කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. Right? How one factor influence another factor, right? Those interactions are also not explained clearly, right? To which each of these factors influence the actual behavior. දැන් ඇත්තටම මේ factors වලින් influence වෙන්නේ කොච්චරක්ද? හරි, දැන් එක්සැම්පල් එකක් ගත්තොත් මම එක behavior එකක්, ඒ behavior එකෙන් කොච්චර ප්‍රමාණයක් observation වලින් බලපාලා තියෙනවද, environmental factor, cognitive factors කොච්චර බලපාලා තියෙනවද, අනිත් factors කොහොමද කියලා එහෙම කියන්න බෑ. හරි, ඒ තරමට මේවා එකට connect වෙලා තියෙන්නේ, explain කරන එකක් ලේසි නෑ. මේ theory එකෙන් උනත් ඒක clear නෑ, right? And the other one is it disregards biological and hormonal predispositions that may influence behavior regardless of past experience and expectations, right? This again, right? This theory also disregards the biological and hormonal influence, right? That may influence behavior, right? You know that biological factors, the hereditary the genetical factors, right, influence the behavior of the people, right? First, they influence the personalities of people, right? And through that, they influence the behaviors, right? It is a truth, right? දැන් හොයාගෙන තියෙන්නේ මේ biological factors, right? Genetical factors මිනිසුන්ගේ පෞරුෂයට බලපානවා, right, to determine the physiological factors as well as psychological factors, right? Those factors are some part of those factors are determined by the these genetical factors, right? But this theory also disregard the impact of those biological factors, right? And these hormonal predispositions also influence behaviors, right? Now, you know that hormones play a very important role in our lives, right? Especially hormones influence our biological processes, right? And sometimes our emotions also. But since Madam, in this theory, the things a person learns from environment not always change his or her behavior. So how it has become a limitation? I didn't mention that it as a limitation, right? Now, is this chat, right? Madam, in the theory, the things person learn from the environment not always change his or her behavior. So how it becomes a limitation? It is not a limitation, right? It is not a limitation. It is not here. It is not a limitation. Now, which you have mentioned, it is not similar to the first limitation, right? It is a different one. So, we have these three limitations, right? I want now you can see that all of these theories, they are psychological theories, right? Somewhat difficult to explain these theories, right? It is somewhat difficult to explain these theories, but I tried my best to simplify those theories and to explain it. But I want you to read more and understand these theories properly. මේවා ඔයාලා හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න මේවා use කරලා තියෙන්නේ මේ psychology වල. හරි? ඔයාලට කියවන්න ගත්තත් ගොඩාක් examples ඇති psychology වලට සම්බන්ධ. හරි? workplace එකට relate කරලා ටිකක් අඩුවෙන් තියෙනවා. හරි? නමුත් ඔයාලා කියවන්න මේ හරිම ඉන්ටරෙස්ටිං මේ දේවල් ඔයාලට රිසර්ච් එහෙම කරනවා නම් ඒවට උනත් උඟක් හොඳයි. චුට්ටක් ඔයාලා හොයාගෙන කියවන්න. හරි? Right. Next I will move to the final theory, humanistic theory. Right? Now, actually, we discuss this theory. We talked about this theory under the previous session also. When I explained the nature of organizational behavior, we discussed its humanistic and optimistic nature. Right? I will take it again. I sent you an article. Please read it. Right? Now, what is humanism? What is humanism? It is another psychological approach that stresses on the study of the whole individual and behavior related to an individual's inner feelings and self-image. You show that some theories, right? As we discussed earlier, some theories such as behavioristic and cognitive, they used reductionist approach. They focus only one aspect of human beings, either their observable actions or cognition. But this humanistic approach, it focuses on the whole person. It addresses how we think, how our emotions impact our thoughts, how our brain and emotion respond to each other, and how we perceive ourselves, and finally how all of those things influence our behaviors, right? And this perspective, it is based on the idea that each person is unique and has the free will to change his or her life at any given time. Now, this is also true, right? It is based on the idea that each person is unique. We know that. Now, we have around, at the moment, we have around 49 students in the class, right? We have 49 unique personalities in the class. You are different from each other. Even the twins are different from each other. Twins have their own unique characteristics. Right? Each person is unique, right? It focuses on unique human capabilities. They believe that the people who introduced this theory, right? For example, Carl Rogers, right, believe that people are different from each other, and each one of them have their own unique qualities and characteristics, and people have the choice in what they do and their actions. Free will, very important term. Each person is unique and has free will to change his or her life at any given time. Free will, it is the power of human beings to choose among alternative actions or behaviors. It is a power, right? It is a capability of human beings to choose among alternative actions or behaviors. They can act independently. එක්තනේ හරි මිනිසුන්ට ඒ බලය තියෙනවා, ඒ පවර් එක තියෙනවා. හරි? ඒ ඔල්ටර්නේටිව් ඇක්ෂන් වලින් ඔයාගේ මොකකටද යන්නේ කියන එක තියෙනවා. හරි? නැති වෙලාවලුත් තියෙනවා, මතක තියාගන්න. හරි? Sometimes you are influenced by powerful other people in the society, in the organization. Right? So you don't have the power to select the choice that you want. Now, here we are not talking about that, right? We are talking about the natural ability of the person to select his or her own actions. So that is the free will, right? Power of human beings to choose among alternative actions or behaviors. They can act independently. And another important concept is self-awareness, right? Or the concept of self. It represents our thoughts and feelings about ourselves. How you would respond to the question, who am I? Now, according to this theory, all of those things influence our behavior. Right? We have the freedom to select our behavior. Right? We have the freedom to change our behavior. Right? We have to take the responsibility for our actions and reactions. Right? So likewise, another important concept is self-awareness or the self-concept. How would you respond to the question, who am I? Your answer can show how you see yourself. If your response is primarily positive, then you tend to feel good about who you are. And it will influence your behavior, similar to self-efficacy, right? And if your response is mainly negative, then you may feel unhappy with who you are. And that will also influence your behavior, right? And this humanism, this approach believes that people are responsible for the choice that they made. People are responsible for their actions because they decide on actions independently. May humanism අපි කතා කරපු විදියට මේ මිනිසුන්ගේ තියෙන capabilities ගැන. එයාලගේ potentials දිහා තමයි බලන්නේ. හරි? දැන් මේ theory එකෙන් අනිත් ඒවා reject කිරීමක් කරන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් අර cognition එකට සමාන දෙයක් වෙනත් ආකාරයකින් කතා කිරීමක් තමයි කරන්නේ. එතකොට ගොඩක් theory
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Sorry, I was disconnected for a few seconds. Let me share the slide again. Now, can you see the slides?
Yes, madam, we can see.
Right. Right. So, now we were talking about this. This theory is similar. Actually, it is not. Lot of researchers have contributed to this theory, right? Now, Carl Rogers, right? Carl Rogers, one of the person, and Other researchers are now, if you take this Abraham Maslow, right? And then Herzberg, you learned the theories of Abraham Maslow as well as the Herzberg theory under the first year motivation. If you take this Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, I don't know whether you remember it or not, the last level of need, it is the top need is self-actualization, right? So he introduced those needs because Abraham Maslow believed in the capabilities of human beings, the positive aspect of human beings, right? According to this Abraham Maslow, humans have the capability to achieve, go to their fullest potential. දැන් මැස්ලෝ විශ්වාස කරා මිනිසුන්ට පුළුවන් කියලා එයාලගේ උපරිම තැනටත් යන්න. හරි? ඒ විශ්වාසය නිසා තමයි එයා ඒ වගේ දෙයක් මැස්ලෝගේ හයිරාකි එකේ ඔයාලට මතක ඇති මැප් එකක් කොග්නිටිව් මැප් එක එළියට ගත්තොත් එහෙම උඩින්ම තියෙන්නේ self actualization. හරි? ඒ උඩ තියෙන needs ටික දිහා බැලුවාම ඔයාලට තේරෙනවා එයා කොයි වගේද විශ්වාස කරන්නේ කියලා. හරි? මිනිසුන්ගේ potentials ගැන. Right? So Abraham Maslow, it is another scholar who contributed to this humanism, and the other main person is Carl Rogers, right? So these are the main points. Now look at this one. How does my own ambition and desires to be the best version of myself affect my behavior? Your ambitions, right? Your self-concept, your desires, right? All of those things influence your behavior. The humanistic perspective argues that what ultimately drives human behavior is individual choice. Because we have the ability to select our own behavior. That is what ultimately drives human behavior. Our choice, right? Which is influenced by our cognitive processes. All humans naturally strive to grow. That is also true. You know that. Look at yourself, right? Why you are here, right? To study this program, right? To follow MBA. Are you all MBA kakkarani, right? All humans naturally strive to grow, develop, and in control of their own lives and behaviors. So our expectations, our goals, our ambitions, our desires, and our choices, right? And our mental processes, all of those things influence our behaviors, right? Our desire to grow, to develop, and to be in control of our own lives, all of those things influence our behaviors. Now, look at this, right? This is one of the Maslow's ideas. After I satisfy my basic needs, like food and safety, I can begin to satisfy enriching needs, like romance and social prestige. And they don't stop from that point, right? They go up to the needs, right? Up to the self-actualization. We needs hierarchy ke wala uta matak karagattot ehema eliyata adala gattot Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We start from the basic needs and end with the self-actualization. Because naturally, right, human beings strive to grow, develop, and develop. අපිට ඉස්සරහට යන්න, ඒ fullest potential එකට යන්න, ළඟා කර ගැනීමට තියෙන උපරිම තත්වයට යන්න අපිට තියෙන ඕම එක තමයි අපේ behavior එකට බලපෑම් කරලා අපි ඉස්සරහට අරගෙන යන්න. හරි? ඒ desire එක අපිට ලොකු බලපෑමක් කරනවා. හරි? Right. Now look at this. Human beings are responsible for their own happiness and well-being. We know that, right? Once Aristotle also mentioned that around 384 BC, right? Aristotle, as I remember, Aristotle mentioned that humans are responsible for their actions and they freely choose what to do. Aristotle mentioned that before Carl Rogers, right? More than 1,000 years ago, right? Human beings are responsible for their own happiness and well-being, right? They are responsible for their actions and they freely choose what to do and what not to do. And one can argue that, right? Anybody can argue that we are controlled by God or the karma or fate or any other thing. But we know that we have the power and the ability to determine our own behavior. හරි අපි කියනවා දෙවියන් වහන්සේගේ කැමැත්තට කියන්න පුළුවන්. හරි එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒක කර්මය කියන්න පුළුවන්. හරි මේක තමයි මගේ ඉරණම කියන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ මොකක් වුණත් අපි දන්නවා අපිට ලොකු හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා අපේ behaviors අපේ ජීවිතේ සහ අපේ අනාගතය මේ සියල්ලම තීරණය කරන්න අපි තුල ලොකු හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා. හරි? එතකොට ඒ අපේ මිනිසුන්ගේ තියෙන ඒ potential එක, ඒ positive quality එක කොහොමද human behavior එකට බලපාන්නේ කියන එක තමයි මේ කතා කරන්නේ. Right? Then they discuss about the innate capacity of human beings, right, for self-actualization. So what do you mean by self-actualization? It is the realization or fulfillment of one's talents and potentials, right? Which is their unique desire to achieve the highest potential as human beings, right? So, it is the full realization of one's creative, intellectual and social potential. So, that is the at the top, right? So in order to achieve your fullest potential, before that you have to do a lot of other things, right? So it is a process, right? So your desire to realize your own fullest potential, it influences your behavior, right? It influences your desires, your motives, your expectations, goals, and your behaviors. Then මේ මිනිස්සුන්ට මේ තමන්ට ළඟා කර ගැනීමට තියෙන උපරිමයට. හරි? අපි බොහොම සරල විදිහට ගත්තොත් මිනිස්සු කිසිම එක දෙයකින් තෘප්තිමත් වෙන්නේ නැහනේ. හරි? දැන් ඔයාලා මේ MBA එක කරලා නවතින එකක් නෑ. වෙන ප්‍රොෆෙෂනල් කෝස් එකක් හරි ට්‍රේනින් ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම්ස් හරි මේ කැරියර් පාත් එකේ ඉස්සරහට යන්න පුළුවන් උපරිමයම කරනවා. හරි? එතකොට දැන් මම PhD එක කරන්න නවතින්නේ නෑ. Now I am planning to apply for my professorship. Right? So then I will try to apply for the senior professorship. So likewise there is no end, right? අපිට අර උපරිමයට ළඟා වෙනකන් end එකක් නැහැ. හරි? එතකොට අපි ඒ අපේ desires ඒ උපරිමයම ළඟා කර ගැනීමට මිනිස්සු යන මේ ගමන් මගේ ඒ motives, ඒ expectations, ඒ desires, ඒ සියල්ලම මගේ අපි වැඩ කර අපේ behaviors තීරණය කරනවා. හරි? එතකොට ඒක තමයි මේ මෙතන කතා කරන්නේ. හරි? මේක මේ වෙනම specific broad theory එකක් නෙමෙයි. හරි? මේ theory එකෙන් අර මිනිසුන්ගේ තියෙන ඒ positive capacity එක කොහොමද human behavior එකට බලපාන්නේ කියන ඒක තමයි address කරන්නේ. ඇත්තටම මේ there are only 3 main theories of organizational behavior, right? Behavioristic theory, cognitive theory and social cognitive theory, right? This is kind of a sub-theory that provide additional explanation to human behavior, right? And to human learning. දැන් මේ මිනිස්සු ඉගෙන ගන්න ආකාරයට සහ මිනිස්සු හැසිරෙන ආකාරයට තීරණය කරන්න එක කොහොමද වෙන්නේ කියලා වෙනස් විදිහේ දැක්මක් දෙන එකක් තමයි එක ඇස්පෙක්ට් එකක් කතා කරන එකක් තමයි මේ humanistic theory කියලා කියන්නේ. හරි? නමුත් අර අච්චර ප්‍රබල විදිහට human behavior එක address කරන theory එකක් නෙමෙයි අර cognitive theory වගේ මේ humanistic theory එක. හරි මේක ඇතුලේ ගොඩාක් දේවල් තියෙනවා. හරි? නමුත් ඒගොල්ලෝ පැහැදිලිවම වෙන වෙනම කතා කරන්නේ මෙන්න මේ විදිහට තමයි මේක influence කරන්නේ කියලා. Right? So finally human beings are innately good and that their deviations from this natural tendency result in mental and social problems. According to these researchers, right? According to the scholars who introduced this theory, human beings are innately good. But one can argue that human beings are innately bad, evil. නරකයි කියන්න පුළුවන් දෙකමක් තියෙනවනේ නේද? හරි? But they believe the positive sides of human beings, right? They believe in these researchers, they believe in positive qualities of human beings. That's why they named it as humanistic approach. Right? According to them, human beings are innately good and that they are deviation from their natural tendency. So naturally they are good, right? But if they deviate from this natural tendency, it is a result of mental and social problems. සාමාන්‍ය මිනිස්සු ඉපදෙන්නේ හොඳ විදියට. හරි? හැබැයි ඒගොල්ලන් ඒ හොඳ ගති නැතුව යනවා නම් ඒක මේ සමාජයේ සහ බලපෑමක් එහෙම නැතිනම් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ මනස නිවැරදි ආකාරයට ගොඩ නැගිලා නැති නිසා කියලා තමයි මේ humanistic theory එකේ කියන්නේ. Right? Next we have the limitation. It is too positive. It is one of the limitation. It is too positive when regarding human behavior. It means that it assumes individuals are intrinsically good then. Will choose positive path for their lives. However, free will and choice is limited for some individual. That is also true, right? If we take the first one, human beings are intrinsically good, but there are a lot of bad qualities within human beings. We know that. Throughout our life, we have experienced those things. We have met a lot of bad people. අපි දැකලා තියෙනව නේද? මේ නරක ගතිගුණ තියෙන බොහෝ මිනිස්සු ගැන අපි දැකලා තියෙනවා, අහලා තියෙනවා. Right? They have both positive and negative qualities. Right? But this theory assumes that they are intrinsically good and always choose positive path. That is also wrong. Right? In certain context, not always. Right? Some people, they select negative path, right? And free will and choice, it is also limited for some individuals. That is also true. Even though we want to make decisions in relation to our behaviors, sometimes we don't have that power because we are influenced by a lot of other powerful people, because we have influenced by a lot of other economic factors, right? And a lot of other physical factors. Those things are also influence our behaviors. So even though we want to make certain decisions in relation to our behaviors, we can't make them always. We are not independent always, influenced by a lot of other factors, right? And there is too much emphasis on subjective experiences. Actually, these researchers, they talked about subjective experiences, positive emotions, positive aspects, emotional aspects, positive capabilities of human people, but very difficult to measure them or to conduct experiments on those things. They are subjective, right? Then this approach is not scientific. They did not use any rigorous objective method that doesn't make predictions that can be proved or disproved. Now, you know that. ඔයාලට මේක කියවනකොට දැනේ. හරි? දැන් අපි ඉස්සර වෙලා කිව්වේ වගේ දැක්කා scientific experiments base කරන් තමයි ඒ ඔක්කොම ගොඩ නැගිලා තියෙන්නේ. නමුත් මේක එහෙම නෙමෙයි. හරි? මිනිසුන්ට යාළගේ fullest potential වලට reach කරන්න ඕන කිව්වට ඒක prove කරන්න කොහොමද සාධක? හරි? ඒක scientifically පුළුවන්ද? So there's a problem, right? And places emphasis on conscious awareness. This limits the scope of the humanistic approach as it ignores things that are out of conscious awareness, right? Now, not only that, right? දැන් මෙතන කතා කරන්නේ අපි මේකේ විදිහට නම් හැම දෙයක්ම අපි හිතලා තමයි කරන්නේ. නමුත් අර නොහිතන දේවල් වල තියෙන බලපෑම. හරි? අපේ behavior එකට සමහර දේවල් බලපාන්න පුළුවන් external factors. හරි? එතකොට ඒවා මේකෙදි consider වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා තමයි කියන්නේ. Right? So I want you to read more on this humanistic approach also. I actually uploaded reading material in relation to humanistic approach. The exam එකට එහෙම ටෙස්ට් කරන්නේ නැහැ ඔක්කොම මම එවපු දේවල්. නමුත් මට ඔයාලා කියවන්න. හරි මේ හරි ඉන්ටරෙස්ටිං ඒරියාස් මේවා කියවන්න. හරි මේ ඔක්කොම එක්සෑම් එකට ටෙස්ට් වෙනවාද එහෙම කියලා හිතන්න එපා. ඔය වෙන රීඩින් මැටීරියල්ස් කියවනකොට ඒවා හරි ඉන්ටරෙස්ටිං ඔයාලට වැඩි දුර කියවන්න තමයි ඒවා එවන්නේ. ඒක නිසා කියවන්න. Right? Now that is the end of this session, right? It's 4:37. If you have any question, please ask. Hello? Yes. Actually, learning these theories are sufficient, right? So the things, learn the things which I taught in the class, right? That's sufficient. If you are interested in these areas, you can read more. But those things will not be tested in your exams, right? Right. Right. So I will stop the class now, right? And next week, Professor Udayanga will take the next class, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam.
Recording
Thank you,
stopped.
madam.
Thank you, madam.